Hey, everybody. Anthony here. First off, apologies for no new episode last week. Longtime fans know, and I've certainly made no secret on this show about my recurring battles with depression. And lately, I've just kind of been in a mental hole trying to dig my way out. Although I do my best not to let it impact the show too much, I just haven't really had the spoons to do the requisite reading and writing necessary to bring you an episode worthy of the usual quality. But the good news is, don't worry too much. I am on the upswing out of the hole. So hopefully by the next episode, I will be feeling close to a normal person. Only slightly joking there. But having said that, we're doing something a little different with this. Since The Marvels is hitting theaters this week, normally we would do an episode about the main character, except we've already done episodes on Carol, Monica, and Kamala. So what we're doing here is combining all three into one giant Marvel's Megasode, and it gives you a chance to catch up on the characters before seeing the movie in theaters if you haven't gone back through our catalog and caught up on some of those older episodes. Now, keep in mind that these are a few years old. Carol was issue 41 from March 2019. Monica was issue 42 from March 2019. And Kamala was issue 76 from April 2020. So 3-4 years since those episodes have been released. A lot has happened since they were released, but the cores of the characters and the issues that they deal with haven't changed all that much, nor has the advice that Doc and I have for anybody dealing with some of the issues. So sit back, relax, enjoy this compilation episode, and we will see you in 2 weeks with a brand new episode on Bigby Wolf. I promise it's coming.
Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.
Hello and welcome to Capes on the Couch, where comics get counseling. I'm Anthony Sitko.
And I'm Dr. Issues.
This is issue number 41 about the one, the only, Captain Marvel herself, Carol Danvers.
Yeah, she's kind of a big deal.
Just kind of. So before the movie comes out this weekend, my wife and I will be going to see it along with my brother-in-law tomorrow night. Well, Thursday night, if you're listening to this on release day, Wednesday. So we are very, very excited to go see the latest addition to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Neither my brother-in-law and I, nor I feel you, Doc, are intimidated by the notion of a strong, powerful woman. We are going to see the movie. We are going to enjoy it. And to all of the sniveling fanboys who are upset at some of Brie Larson's comments that she wants to see more inclusivity in representation in media and in the press corps, if you're upset by that, then you're the exact reason why everyone is calling for more inclusivity in everything.
Well said.
Representation matters. That's all I'm going to say, because that does not really reflect too much on the comics. So, but before we get started, as always, you can find us on our website, capesonthecouch.live. We are on all forms of social media at Capes on the Couch. You can also subscribe to our Patreon, which, Doc, by the way, I have a little surprise for you, and I held off until we were recording so I could get your authentic reaction. We have a brand new president level Patreon.
Whoa.
Yep.
Okay. That's awesome.
So we have officially maxed out our president level patrons. Ariel.
Okay.
Ariel, I'm not sure how she chooses to pronounce it, but she has joined the ranks of Brian and Matt as our $10 a month patrons. So much thanks and appreciation, Ariel. We are that much closer to live streaming our recording sessions, which, as I said, we will do if we hit the $50 a month. So we're in the mid 40s now. So if just a couple more folks choose to subscribe at maybe the $1 or the $3, the $5 levels, you get some early access. If you're at 3 and up, you get the uncensored content. If you're 5 and up, or even if you just want to do the $1 just to say, hey, I support this show, $1 a month, and we show us some love, you can go to patreon.com/capesonthecouch and subscribe. So Ariel, we will be reaching out to you. I already sent you a message to ask if you have any suggestions for who you want to see done in the remainder of our March episodes, because aside from Carol and next week Monica Rambeau, we are not married to the idea of our last 2 episodes this month, and we can just bump them for later.
I just want to say I am grateful that she is part of our world.
Oh. You may have just guaranteed that this will be the only month in which she subscribes, because after a comment like that, she may just pull her Patreon subscription.
Hey, you pay your money, you take your chances.
All right, that's fair. That's fair. I suppose I'm sure it's not the first Little Mermaid joke she's heard in her life. So I just wanted to give her a special shout out and thank you very much. And also our weekly podcast recommendation is Anxiety this week. Gerald's battle with anxiety and panic disorder that he catalogs throughout the show. Just he says at the beginning of the episodes that they are in chronological order as he describes his history. So this is a show in which you definitely want to start with episode 1 and work your way through. But in any case, he's at anxiety.podbean.com. That's ANXZENITY. So I guess he's combining Zen and anxiety. So that's sort of where it comes from. You can also check him out on Twitter at Anxiety. So thank you, Gerald. You've been a big fan of the show, and we'd just like to sort of return the favor. And you can catch us on all your major podcast platforms and venues. And if you listen to us on a platform that allows you to rate and review, please like, subscribe, rate, and review our show, and we will read your reviews on the show.
Yep.
I think that just about covers it for the intro. So to tie in with as I said, the latest addition to the Marvel Cinematic Universe dropping this week, Captain Marvel, we are going to cover the history of one Carol Danvers. So Carol Danvers was created by Roy Thomas and Gene Colan in Marvel Superheroes number 13, March 1968. She was originally an Air Force officer working as head of security of a missile base alongside Dr. Walter Lawson, the alias of Mar-Vell, at the time, the original and only Captain Marvel. She gets caught in an explosion of a Kree device called the Psyche Magnetron and sustained some serious injuries. She was healed by Captain Marvel and returned and recuperated with some superhuman abilities. Now, originally, these abilities manifested themselves without her conscious knowledge. So she would shift into what would become known as the Ms. Marvel persona, and then Ms. Marvel would leave and she would return to Carol with no memory of what she did as Ms. Marvel.
That sounds like the definition of dissociation. If you mention dissociative identity disorder, I swear I will end this podcast right now.
I'm not going to say it.
Good.
But you just did?
Wow. Okay. Then again, I was going to say if my pun didn't get it, then Ariel's going to leave on your pun. But if she subscribed and became a patron, then she's used to the puns by now.
Yeah, she knows what she's in for. So anyway, Carol is now calling herself Ms. Marvel, and she works as a human Kree hybrid and joins the Avengers. So in Avengers 200, she gets kidnapped. This is one of the most, dare I say, controversial storylines in Marvel history, and certainly with respect to Carol Danvers as a character. In Avengers 200, she gets kidnapped by Marcus, the son of Immortus, and she is brought to an alternate dimension where he uses machines to seduce and impregnate her. Their son rapidly ages to another version of Marcus. He takes her back to the alternate dimension after the Avengers believe that she's fallen in love with him.
So there was a matter of impregnation against her will. I don't think it's a stretch to say that's a huge problem.
She returns to Earth after Marcus dies, and she's attacked by Rogue, who absorbs her powers and memories. And that's a whole other situation, because that's where Rogue gains, frankly, a lot of her powers and later issues from, as Rogue definitely struggled with the notion of Carol living in her head for quite some time. She confronts the Avengers and blames them
basically saying that they did nothing to stop Marcus from brainwashing her. And she goes after Beast and a number of the other Avengers because she basically says, you all were very happy that I was pregnant and I fell in love with this guy, even though you knew nothing about him. And he took me away to this alternate dimension and none of you did anything to stop. And they were all like, but we thought you loved him. Ugh. And she said that basically you should have known better. You did a disservice to me. And some really rough and heavy stuff there. Yeah. It was a way to undo the damage, because even like we say this now, looking back on the storyline at the time and go, wow, that was really rough. Even when it was written, fans and readers were going, that's messed up. Yeah. So even in the era in which it was written, which was the 70s, late 70s, there was still this notion of, she got raped. Is no one going to talk about this?
Yeah. I realize that creative license allows for uncomfortable situations to be written and drawn and expounded upon. But I always wonder in these circumstances, was there someone, I think in most organizations, there should be someone who's not considered quote unquote professional that can just pull the people in charge aside and say, I'm not so sure this is a good idea.
You mean like an HR department or literally any woman?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, it was definitely a boys' club at Marvel at the time, and that's why they were able to get away with this. And I put that in air quotes. So she lives without her powers for a while, and she helps the X-Men as a pilot, because this is after Rogue not only absorbs the powers, but she basically stole her powers from her. So she gets experimented on by the Brood, and she gains the power of a star and becomes known as Binary. Then she later loses those powers, and she uses the name Warbird, and she becomes an alcoholic after getting depressed about the loss of power. And Tony Stark actually is very helpful in guiding her back on track because of Tony's well-documented struggles with alcoholism. And if you want to hear more about that, you can listen to our Tony Stark episode.
Absolutely. Now, to just briefly comment on this, I think instead of ragging on all the missteps they may have taken with storylines, I read this one. I thought it was excellent. I thought it was realistic. I thought that having someone who is a peer support is a great way to go.
Yeah. And it was certainly understandable that after all of this trauma and everything that she had gone through, that she would seek some sort of a crutch. It turned out to be alcohol, obviously not the best crutch or a good one at all. But the fact that she had Tony there, and the fact that they called upon that history of Tony and alcoholism, because this is Post-Demon in a bottle. And he basically says, yeah, I know exactly what you're going through, and let me help you work with this because this is how I deal with it. So she returns to the Ms. Marvel name after the House of M event and joins Iron Man's side as an advocate for the Registration Act during Civil War. Then she joins the New Avengers after the Secret Invasion storyline. And this is really that mid-2000s period, which is really when we see Carol Danvers elevated to a more of an A-lister. She'd always been sort of a B-list. She was very powerful, and she showed up in stories here and there, but she wasn't always a primary focus of the Marvel comic universe. In the mid-2000s, she really gets elevated. Brian Michael Bendis had a large part in that because of the way that he wrote her and his love and appreciation for the character, and she gets elevated. So then she becomes Captain Marvel in 2012, and this is the Kelly Sue DeConnick storyline, and this is really what elevates her and what led to the current incarnation of Captain Marvel as we will see her in film. This is very much based on the Kelly Sue DeConnick run in 2012 with the costume redesigned by Jamie McKelvey. Prior to this, she basically wore a one-suit bathing suit with a little red sash tied around her waist. Not the most effective for fighting bad guys. When Jamie McKelvey redesigned the suit, he said, she used to be an Air Force pilot. This would probably be something much more flight suit like. Plus, we're going to give her some full body covering that isn't just, hey, let's show off the boobs and ass. And that is the costume that we see her in the movie. And that's been basically the basis of all of her costumes with minor modifications since that time period. So credit goes to Jamie McKelvey for his amazing work. He's a fantastic artist and also a damn good costume designer in comics. So he gets credit for sort of helping visually reinvent Carol Danvers, in addition to Kelly Sue DeConnick's writing, which again reinvigorated the character.
It's unusual that we talk about a character like this that was created so long ago. And to be honest with you, aside from the X-Men cartoon, I didn't give much thought to Ms. Marvel, to Carol Danvers, or anything of the sort. So I'll admit, I'm late to the party, but I'm definitely glad I'm there now.
Yeah. As are, I think, a lot of us that have read everything that's happened to her. Again, particularly since that Kelly Sue DeConnick run. So go check that out. In Civil War II, she leads the heroes who want to use a precognitive powered individual to arrest people before they commit crimes. It's basically superhero Minority Report.
Shout out to Philip K. Dick. He wrote some great sci-fi stuff.
He was a man well ahead of his time. So, and then it was revealed last year that her mother was Kree and that the psychic magnetron revealed her latent powers rather than fused her DNA. And I'm wondering if that's how they're going to sort of pre-retcon before the movie, because I know that many times when a character is going to appear in an MCU film, their comic version is altered to more accurately reflect the new version of the character, because Marvel is smart enough to realize that way more people are going to see the movies than ever read the comics. And this happened with Wanda and Pietro, that all of a sudden, oh no, they were actually Inhumans all along, and that their father wasn't Magneto. And it's a way to sort of get away from the mutant aspect, because this was the time period in which Marvel was basically disowning all the X-Men because of the rights issues. I guess that problem has been solved.
That's going to create some interesting points of diversion, because you have to make the choice. Are you going to reestablish the things that you changed, or are you going to retcon a retcon? That's going to be an interesting choice.
Based on past history, I'll say they'll probably retcon or retcon. So moving into Carol Danvers' issues, the first thing that I want to talk about is not a problem for her, but it's a problem as to how it's perceived by some. And I also think that this is very telling that we scripted this a while ago. And then, of course, all the stuff that's come out about the movie, that Carol's assertiveness is used against her by some men, either in the Air Force or in superheroing, that she's been a target because of her positive traits. And again, I find it telling that this happens to Carol in the comics, and we're seeing a related thing happen to Brie Larson, that a number of fanboys are saying that they're not going to watch this movie now because that they feel that Brie Larson doesn't want them to see this movie because they are twisting the comments that she made on the press tour. In fact, on my personal Twitter account, I got into an argument with somebody because of some things that I said, basically saying that if you're upset about this, well, then fanboys, maybe you should smile more. Because you're more attractive when you smile, and, maybe it's hormones. Maybe you should eat some chocolate. Hashtag how do you like it? And I got in an argument with a woman of all things, which I was kind of surprised about, who said that I'm not like a butthurt fanboy, whatever like that. I feel that her comments rub me the wrong way. And my response is basically only a hit dog yelps. So if you're the type of person who's not seeing this because of the comments that Brie Larson made, then you are the exact type of person who needs to understand why she said it. And you are the reason why she said what she said. But I digress. But it ties back in with Carol's notion that she is headstrong, she is assertive, and these are not bad things. And you and I talked offline recently that Carol is referred to by some as bossy. And that's a word that is used almost exclusively by men against women, that if a man shows the same assertiveness and leadership qualities, that he's considered to be a leader and he's assertive and he's strong. But if a woman is take charge and she is very clear in indicating what she wants and how she wants it, well, then she's bossy, and that carries that negative connotation to it. And so, Doc, I wanted to know what your thoughts were on some of the stuff that Carol has had to grapple with over the 50 years of being a character.
I'm not sure I can expound upon it much more than you did, but I'll try. I think that someone who attributes the primary point of humanity to their sexuality is going to end up in a situation where any challenge to the status quo is going to create conflict. That's a fancy way of me saying, I'm a man, you're a woman, I know my role, you need to know yours. Anything that goes against that is going to not just cause friction between you and I, but it's also going to limit your ability to do anything in a setting that's predominantly men. So for Carol, her role as a fighter pilot in a military setting, you realize we're still grappling with this right now, right? Not just male, female, but transgender as well. This is something that is still being discussed. Decades after, in my opinion, it needed to be, the idea that women can be drafted just went through a court proceeding because women have been allowed to participate in the military for a long time. And even though we don't draft here in our country, in the United States, we don't have it right now. The idea is every man has to register if they are of age. And heaven forbid we have to reinstitute a draft. Well, there was a hearing that pointed out women are allowed to fight and therefore women should be a part of the draft. These are basic concepts of what humanity is supposed to be. The fact that we as a society still have this as a problem or something that needs these clarifications, which is still only 100 years after women in this, it's still less than 100 years for women to have the right to vote. In other words, to have an open voice about how our society is handled speaks volumes. So let's shift the frame a bit. We're still having this discussion right now. This is the year 2019 or 2019, not to tick people off about that. Women get the right to vote in 1920. The idea that a woman could work outside the house really starts to take shape consistently in the 1950s and 60s. The idea that women can participate in athletic events, like running a marathon, that lasted until the 1970s. Almost Anthony and my lifetime. The idea of Title IX in sports is still something that comes up as a discussion. And now it goes so far as to say that we have female superheroes that are incredibly strong and may very well be the most powerful versions of superheroes is something that people can't wrap their head around.
I was going to say that on a side note and a related note to that point, Kevin Feige has basically come out and said that Captain Marvel is the strongest superhero in the MCU. And I think that this film is going to showcase that. And we're certainly going to see her help battle Thanos in Avengers Endgame. And also, to your point, also going back to something that we didn't mention really in the creation, but when she became a superhero for the first time and she was originally known as Ms. Marvel, that name was not an accident. That Ms. was a clear indication of Ms. Magazine, Gloria Steinem, the feminist movement that took place in the late 60s in the United States that was definitely indicative of the rise of female power and feminism in the U.S., and Carol Danvers was very much a symbol of that.
Part of what becomes a problem is that as women have taken a much larger role equal to that of men in multiple parts of society, there is a false assumption that the gain of that type of power indicates a loss of femininity. That's absurd, but it is actually a very natural conclusion that a large segment of society has come to.
I thought you were going to say that with the rise of femininity, it also equates with a loss of masculinity or a reduction in the role that men play in society as if it were a zero-sum game.
In all honesty, I think you're saying it better than I did, and that's fine, as long as the point gets across. But if a person is challenged on what they consider to be the essence of their existence, then they're going to, in general, fight for it rather than acquiesce. So someone like Carol Danvers taking a position that traditionally, and I use that term sarcastically, is taken by a male, then that means that men suffer because one less male can be in that position. Once again, absolutely false. If you had a society of nothing but men, then you would think that all men would look to have what they consider to be their appropriate position, their occupation, their drives, their families, their motivations in life. And yet we don't look at it that way. You mentioned we look at it as a zero-sum game, as if the population itself isn't increasing, as if we don't look on a day-to-day basis for the general resources of what's needed to help society flourish, as if that has ever come into question. We'll have fights about what's most important at any given time, but we don't say, I want to make sure that women don't have jobs because that's going to destroy the planet. Except that's the extent that some people take it when it comes to a backlash. I think that that is irrational. And the response by Carol Danvers, it's not outrage. It's production. I don't have to fight you on the merit of your argument. I just have to get the job done. And it's kind of a interesting workaround. In other words, she doesn't try to prove that she is better than men or better than women. She's trying to point out that Carol Danvers is absolutely awesome. But that leads to, in my opinion, an extra energy level that she has to have at all times, because even if she's not consciously trying to create that fight, it's still there. And it's something that doesn't go away just because she has a different approach to it. Because even if she doesn't view it as the number one issue, many men view it as the number one issue.
Well, I think you can ask any woman that's dealt with men in any measure of society that is something that is always in the back of their mind. And it's basically the very notion of male privilege, that when men do something, when men make achievements, they never question, well, he only got it because he's a man or whatever. But if a woman accomplishes anything great, it's, well, did she sleep her way to the top? What did she do? Did she take that spot away from a man? Like you said, and these are constant things that are thrown in women's faces with every achievement that they accomplish, which they have to, as you said, constantly maintain that level of energy to always be prepared to address those concerns rather than focus all of their thoughts on doing the job. They have to be able to defend that in a way that men never do. Similarly with raising children. If a woman is out taking care of her kids and the kids are screaming, it's, oh, she's being a bad mom, whatever. If a father is out in public and the kids are misbehaving, it's, well, dad's babysitting the kids for a while and he's doing the best that he can. There's this assumption that there are roles for women and there are roles for men. And if you step out of those roles, that you are doing an imbalance to society, as though that is all that it's based on. And I'm going to speak with male privilege in the sense that I recognize that this statement is privileged, but I don't care what you use to pee with. Can you get the job done? But that's my utilitarian mindset speaking, that I understand it's about doing the job. But by the same token, I can say that as a man because I'm never questioned on my ability to do the job.
I'll also add another part of the topic, because right now we're talking about male and female, but I'll add in multiple layers to these types of discussions, be it ethnicity, specific race, nationality. All of those factors may carry a similar weight to them for each individual, depending on what their circumstance is. The one that I remember reading about a long time ago and having some difficulty wrapping my head around was the Northern Ireland situation. And when peace was brought there with the United Kingdom and everything else.
The Troubles.
I could not believe reading it. These are people all in the exact same spot, in theory, with very similar histories and cultures, that purely on the idea of sometimes religion, but sometimes even just like what street you were on, completely destroyed lives. That was unfathomable to me, despite the fact that I live in the United States that has its own complicated history. But I realized that's not much different than that. And that's not much different than any movement that allows for a certain subset of people that feel like they are not being respected, trying to find a way to gain respect, and the status quo pointing out that they don't want things taken away from them, not recognizing that they're not losing anything, they're gaining allies. And I think that mindset shift is incredibly difficult for one person, let alone a whole group that decides to organize against what they consider to be a threat.
Oh, it's crabs in a bucket mentality to a certain extent. Absolutely. And then you also get the gatekeeping notion. You have litmus tests and purity tests. We see this a lot in politics. Certain subgroups of political parties will claim, well, you're not X enough for us, and that you're not really a member of this party or this organization. And they end up doing a disservice because they focus on the areas in which they disagree, those small areas in which they are not in lockstep mind agreement, rather than the potential overwhelming majority in which they do agree, because there needs to be this ideological purity. But I mean, we could do a whole other show based solely on that. So
clearly.
as evidenced by how long we've gone on that. So let's move on to the next one before we digress any further. She carries the mantle of Captain Marvel and all of the associated baggage with that. And this is something that, and we will mention it here. And then next week when we cover Monica Rambeau, we can also talk about the notion of a legacy character, which we've done a couple of different episodes on different legacy characters. But Carol is the latest Captain Marvel, and everyone is sort of carrying on the legacy of the original Marvel, who has been long dead in Marvel Comics and unable to, I guess, defend himself, quote unquote, or able to say much about the carrying on of that legacy. And whether it's Genisville, his son, or Monica Rambeau, or there's a couple other characters that have worn that moniker, there's a baggage associated with it because of Captain Marvel and how amazing of a hero that he was, and everyone wants to live up to that standard, and that's not always an easy thing to live up to. And so I wonder if you can unpack that a little bit.
The good news is you have a blueprint. You know that this person handled certain situations with as much diplomacy as it can be dealing with villains, but with power, with grace, with positive results, and with the respect of his peers and society at large. It's hard to get that total package, as we have seen throughout all comics. So when you get that embodiment, you try and recreate it as best you can. Carol didn't ask for that burden, clearly. And I know we've done plenty of episodes about that with Jessica Jones, where you don't know what you're going to get, but it happens to be something that's so incredibly powerful and overwhelming. I think Carol handles that part of it incredibly well. The difference comes from her personality, because Marvel was the type to look at an overall situation, assess what he thought the right thing was to do, and act with that as his number one motivation. And you said it to me a number of times off the mic. What's Carol's motivation?
F you, that's why.
Exactly. She loves the idea of just getting done what it is she thinks she needs to get done. It may not be the ideal, but she can live with those consequences.
Well, part of that is, and we did neglect to mention this during the background, is she is the only daughter among her family. She was raised with brothers, and her father had a sexist mindset and basically believed that even though Carol was the smartest of them, that because she was a woman, she shouldn't go to college, she shouldn't do this or that everything should be focused on her brothers, one of whom ended up dying in an accident that Carol was not able to help with. And she had an estranged relationship with her father. So a lot of this stems from, frankly, daddy issues. I hate to use that term because I find it to be kind of demeaning, but the notion that she was constantly seeking her father's approval that she could never get. And because he died before they could reconcile, she never really got that. So she is forever chasing that notion. And that's something that Kelly Sue DeConnick has talked about numerous times. But the idea that she is chasing her father's approval and she can never get it. So she's going to do the right thing, or she's going to act in whatever way she wants to, because screw you, that's why.
Yeah, that.
And we compare it and contrast against Captain America, who they get compared a lot to, not just because of the name, but because they are very powerful characters and they're often looked at as leaders. Steve does the right thing because it's the right thing to do. Carol does it because F you, that's why.
That's a great way to put it.
That's why she gets back up.
That's a great way to put it.
She will not let anyone take her down.
Right. And that situation of growing up in that type of environment just ties back to the very first point that we made. You don't have to go to the extreme of mentioning an entire group or entire part of society that's fighting against you. You have it in your own home. So you don't get a break. You thought that you overcame it just with how you dealt with your own family, and then to extrapolate that out to finding out there are multiple people in the world. This wasn't a one-off thing. In other words, you get a situation that you think you've handled and it's temporary, and you just move on to something else, and it just gets thrown right back that no, you're going to be dealing with this for as long as the situation and the conditions exist. By the way, those conditions continue to exist almost in perpetuity. I want to just tie this all together so far to say that to have a character have such amazing abilities, to have to justify that they should have those abilities in the first place, they should be the bastion of all that is good, to be the alpha dog, to be the number one person in an organization, to do all of this while basically having people tell you that it doesn't matter because you're not exactly what we were looking for. That's the ultimate in getting a chip on your shoulder.
You think? And that, frankly, again, and I'm sure we'll get to this in the out-of-universe treatment portion, but that's something that so many women can relate to. And that's one of the things that has appealed to the fans of the character, especially, again, since 2012 with the rewrite and the reinvention of the character. But the notion that she has this chip on her shoulder in part because she's a woman and because she faces not only all of these otherworldly, intergalactic, extra-dimensional beings, but has to deal with misogyny and the patriarchy. That is a villain that millions of comic book readers and potential comic book readers can certainly relate to. And that she is their hero, I think, speaks to that. And the fact that Kelly Sue wrote her so well really gave women a rallying point and a new heroine and a new symbol to go, well, if she can do it, then I can. And you saw it recently in the red carpet for the Captain Marvel film with that little girl showing up dressed in the full Captain Marvel regalia and those amazing moments that she had with Brie Larson. That is what, again, going back to sort of what we were talking about earlier, but that's what representation is about. But the notion that it's stuff like this that will eventually, in one day, not in our lifetimes, realistically speaking, but maybe one day, hopefully, create an equal playing field. It's stuff like this that gets you there and that inspires the next generation to fight just a little bit harder so that they get that equality, and that maybe one day this will all happen and we won't have to ideally worry about stuff like this. Well, is the hero a man, woman, trans, cis, bi, heterosexual, homosexual, what have you, that none of that will ultimately matter.
By the way, you're aware that we're taking a risk talking about all this stuff. And what I mean by that is there are several, I'm sure, listeners that have a very spiritual, cultural, religious background that have a lot of questions and a lot of concerns about the things that you just mentioned. And the fact that we're taking a certain stance on this may make them feel alienated. And to that, I would just like to openly say that we're not trying to make people change their minds, but we are trying to make sure that they are open to the fact that people remain people, no matter what else is going on with them. So I'm saying very openly that I think people have the ability to make their own adult decisions and do what they want with their life. And I do think that there are biological bases for things as to their sexuality, as to their aspirations and goals in life, as well as what they've gone through. The number of times I said nature versus nurture is wrong. It's nature and nurture. I strongly continue to hold that conviction. And if anyone feels that we are threatening in any way, then that's the wrong way to look about this. I'm extending an open hand for a handshake. I am not throwing my fist at you, because these types of conversations can get very uncomfortable very quickly if you're not used to having them. So my advice right now for everyone listening, we haven't even gotten to treatment yet. I'm not going to tell her to change who she is. I am not going to tell her who she should look to as a great female role model or male role model in those categories. I'm not going to insult her intelligence. I am not going to tell her that she needs to be more of a female, because that was a fear when we first chose this character, that people would get the idea of, oh boy, Doc's going to set, someone like Carol Danvers straight. And I want to make it clear that she does a great job, and we're just looking to see how we could add an extra boost. That's it. So if we lose some listeners because we're very open, candid, and honest about what we think is appropriate for people living their lives in a mature, sophisticated, and productive, happy way, then by all means, make sure that you get your own counseling and find out what it is that you can do to have a similar life.
You were way more tactful and political than I would have been about that type of situation.
I already know that.
Fair point. Fair point. So let's move on to the last thing. I want to talk about the Marcus incident. So much has been said about it. The articles have been written. It's been discussed ad nauseum for the last 30 something years. And this, again, even in and of itself, the fact that we talk about this as a major incident for her is in and of itself male privilege, because something like this sexual assault and the impregnation, certainly impregnation is something that is exclusively female in nature, but the notion of sexual assault is almost always spoken of as something that happens to women. They're victims of it. And the language that we use is almost exclusively very patriarchal in a sense. And it's sad that we continue to have this discussion about this, that, if we really want to make a female character's backstory tragic, let's throw some rape in there. There's a whole TV trope about it. But the fact remains that it happened, and I think it would be ill-advised if we simply ignored it. So some of the fallout from that Marcus incident certainly stuck with Carol for a number of years. And if you would dare to take a crack at it, I'd be curious to see what some of your thoughts were as you prepare yourself. And this episode, I think, really more so than any of the other ones we've done, is definitely one of the hotter topic wise. So I'll be very curious to see what some of our fans think of it and how they react.
Right. In a situation like this, I'm going to touch on the idea of sexual assault as trauma and the possible responses to it. So I apologize if it comes across as too general as opposed to directly dealing with the character of Carol Danvers. Time and time again, it has been shown that rape is a crime of power before it is a crime of sex. In other words, it's not just a matter of the person trying to obtain stimulation. It's also to fill a void of dominance, usually. I am also well aware that male on female rape is the most talked about, but there are other iterations, and Any person can rape any other person, and it does happen. It's horrible whenever it happens. I want to make sure I mention some things that over decades have become myths, and I want to dispel them. If a person is in a long-standing relationship with another person, then yes, rape can still happen. If a person is married or in a civil union with another person, rape can still happen. If one or more people are intoxicated or under the influence of certain substances or medications, rape can still happen. If a person no longer gives consent to a sexual act and that sexual act still happens, it is rape. Are we clear on this?
I'm clear. Side note, we probably should have thrown up a trigger warning at the start of this episode, or at the very least at the start of this discussion, because I'm just realizing now that if any of our listeners have dealt with sexual assault in their personal lives, this may be a little difficult to hear. Certainly, we apologize for that. We're trying to discuss this in as clinical terms as we possibly can, with all of the empathy due victims that they are certainly entitled to. So I'll make a note in the show notes that this is going to be a difficult episode potentially for some people to listen to, but it's still important to have the conversation.
And thank you for pointing it out, because I want to make it clear on my end as well. I am not blaming anyone who has been a victim of sexual assault. You did not deserve it. You did not put yourself in a situation where that should have happened. So now that we've got that out of the way, let's say an event like that has happened. I'm going to go back to the basics here when it comes to making sure, first of all, that you are safe. If at all possible, contacting someone that you know that you consider to be a positive influence in your life is a great way to go. Contacting the proper authorities if you consider it to be a safe situation is also incredibly important. You do not have to suffer in silence. There are hotlines out there, and this would be a time where, although we've listed the National Suicide Hotline on numerous occasions and we give the general disclaimer, there are other specific hotlines for victims of sexual assault. You do have a right to privacy. And until there is a point where there's some legal action to be taken, you have a right to remain completely anonymous as you see fit. There is no mandate that says you have to press charges or make any claims of specific crimes if you feel like that is going to cause more problems for you under the circumstances. There is no obligation for that. We have well established, however, that the number of cases that have occurred are way, way underreported. And that is a shame, because the idea that people are allowed to do this without having to manage the societal consequences of such actions is dangerous, because that type of behavior is often repeated because the person has allowed themselves to create a narrative that will create the scenario over and over again. I'm not giving specific names, but I'm pretty sure you all recognize, or unfortunately may know, people in those types of circumstances and wonder. To those who have not suffered sexual assault, but are aware of people that are at risk, the best thing you can do is contact them and find out how they're doing. They may not wish to talk to you about details, and that is their right. You may wish to protect them. Providing them options for safe circumstances is wonderful. But I can tell you that mandating such circumstance or such opportunity without consideration for that person's emotions and choices is not beneficial. Once again, I apologize for not specifically going through the Marcus incident with Carol Danvers. and her responses to other heroes and how she felt. I will simply say that there are many people in the world that have felt a similar way. And if you have an opportunity to make a positive impact in someone's life who has experienced that level of trauma, even if it's just to talk to them for a short while, on their terms and at their level, so that they don't feel overwhelmed or feel as if you are trying to take command of a situation that is not yours, then please do so. Because even in the moment, they may not say anything, but I can assure you that you've done some good.
Beautifully said. I think that was comprehensive, or at least as comprehensive as we can be in the short time frame and circumstances that allow. And I don't really know what else can be said. So let's try and follow that up now. Of course, now this is like a, well, then that Mrs. Lincoln, how was the play type incident, but treatment, starting as we always do with In-Universe, treatment of Carol Danvers. What would you, and I feel like this is one of those situations where you would say that you are just trying to make Carol a better hero and that you're not really trying to fix her. And you alluded to that earlier, that you're not going to tell her who she should be or how she should act, etc., but rather just how to cope with some of the things that she has dealt with in a way to further improve her and make her more effective, more efficient, and just generally improve her life. I think that would be a fair, based on knowing how you've gone for the previous 40 episodes. I think I kind of have a general idea about how you're going to go with this.
Yeah.
But so I'll let you take the wheel.
Sure. So we've established that Carol has done a lot, been a good hero, great hero. She had to overcome many things. Kudos to her. Going through what she went through with everything related to the pregnancy, to the relationships, the fact that she doesn't get the opportunity to speak to her father, the fact that she's not able to speak, quote unquote, to Marvell, although they've done so many teasers with him over the years. You just wonder, when is he going to break through? When is he coming back to life, et cetera, et cetera. But I digress. There are so many things that someone as powerful as her can do that she may end up focusing on the few areas that are beyond her control. She's not a true manipulator of all of the things around her. She's not trying to be an overlord. She just wants to get her job done, whatever it is at the given time. So creating a construct that will allow her to do that more on her terms and preemptively address some of the things that may be barriers to that might be most beneficial. Almost like a disclaimer. I know she can't fly around like holding this thing saying, yes, I am comfortable with who I am. No, I didn't think that it was the best way to go about this pregnancy. No, I don't regret the fact that I have to live with the things that have happened. Nothing that ridiculous. But the publicity that goes along with her success is something that she has to navigate in a way that I'd almost say reminds me of how certain sports heroes have had to deal with things. And I use the term hero loosely for sports because I recognize there are people that are doing more things directly good. But there is a way to say something without saying something. So the best example I could think of right now is someone that is opposite of your team, and that's Derek Jeter.
Okay.
He became the master of answering every single question and giving no information. Absolutely not a thing. And yet people loved him. Why? Because they recognized that he gave a lot of effort. They recognized that he was on a winner, which, once again, I'm not implying that the teams that didn't win are quote unquote losers. I'm saying they didn't win. It's a competition in sports. Carol Danvers doesn't even have that aspect to deal with, but she does have the greater societal aspect to say that if you want to talk male versus female, quote unquote, versus, then she's on the starting, quote unquote, losing team. And she's always had to prove that she's the winner. Well, at this point, the evidence is overwhelming that she's a winner. So now she can scale it back with that. She can actually say, look at my track record. You point to that, literally scoreboard. And that's enough. if people want to get into details and fight with her about it, she can get into the weeds. But once again, how on earth does throwing yourself in the barrel as another crab end up helping the situation? So learning to take that step back and giving yourself the opportunity to pick and choose your spots as to where you get into those types of discussions goes a long way. Instead of every event being a nail that has to be hammered down, you recognize that some events are nails, some are screws, some are just not worth even touching. And as soon as you start to discern those, you'll notice that people end up handling your positive traits in a much better light. Yes, a lot of this is what people will refer to as window dressing, because you're not changing who you are, but you are making sure that you are controlling the environment more than you have before. But I think that's a better way to go about it than taking positive attributes and dumbing them down or ignoring them or throwing them away for something that's more negative. Because that has happened to many, many characters. They change because other people thought it was appropriate for them to change, as opposed to them recognizing that it was a trait that wasn't working for them. Carol doesn't need to do that. Now, how to go about it in the universe? I mean, there are so many characters that look up to her anyway. So I don't think it's that hard in that sense. I don't think you need a lot of extemporaneous situations other than having a good writer. This is one of those where I would rely on the fact that people in totality recognize good when they see it. They really do, if they give themselves the opportunity. She now is at the forefront of the universe, and every action is being scrutinized. She doesn't have to worry about how many of them she gets right. She just has to make sure she promotes that the good that she's doing at any one moment is the best that she could have done, because she can live with those consequences.
For what it's worth, I respect Eric Jeter.
Aw, thank you. The Red Sox suck.
You know, I was trying to be polite. I was trying to be genteel.
Yes, I know.
Tactful.
Yeah, forget that. No. You guys just won a championship? You kidding me? No. No. No olive branch here.
Wow. Okay. Way to piss in my cereal then.
Yeah. Had to be done. By the way, that's kind of my point. It's not that you change what you believe or your personality. It's that you know how to do it with more tact. I purposely ignored that tact. And at that point, I'm pretty sure there are plenty of listeners that were like, either, yeah, way to go, Doc. Yeah, or, wow, Doc is a real jerk. That was inflammatory. That's the opposite of what I would do if I were Carol Danvers in that moment. The way I would have or should have said that to you is, I know it was difficult for you to say that, and I greatly appreciate it, because I know the Red Sox won this year, but I guarantee you the Yankees are going to be back, and, we're really going to get you next time. Same information. Didn't change who my fandom, where it stood. It didn't change where your fandom stood. It acknowledged that you were willing to make a mature comment to me, and I'm able to reciprocate. Real simple back and forth. And yet, if I allowed my emotion to go to a certain level, regardless of if I'm male or female, because we know how females are quote unquote emotional, that comes up all the time, right? As opposed to the passion and the fire that men have. Just that slight change makes all the difference. And Carol learning to do that goes a long way.
I thought you were just going to make a comment about how you said all these wonderful, nice things about Carol, and I was still hung up on the Derek Jeter thing.
No, because that is a very important thing.
Okay, fair enough. So out of universe, you're dealing with a very powerful woman. Let's just take the superpowers out of it. She's very respected, but she's got a lot of baggage. I swear to God, I'm not naming names or directing anybody to make any suppositions about who it is that I'm talking about. I'm really just trying to go as generic as possible. I'm not advocating, as I sometimes do in the past, where I have a particular example in mind. This is not that. How would you address that, I guess, differently, minus the superpower aspect, and just treat the woman?
I would like to point out that my office is a place where there can be a level of vulnerability, because in general, in those circumstances, that person has to, quote unquote, be on all the time. You have to present yourself a certain way to multiple people, even at home, and there's no downtime from that. Once again, not saying that they have a different personality, but we all know that there are parts of how we interact with people, as we just demonstrated, that can either be amped up or toned down.
Yeah, I wouldn't know anything about that.
So my office is the opportunity where whatever levels they're used to using in back and forths, don't feel obligated to continue those levels while you're dealing with me directly. If you typically are always tampering down your responses to things because you have to be close to the vest, very buttoned up, because a lot of people are relying on you for something with your position of power, and you make severe, significant decisions that affect multiple people, you can let loose a little bit with me. Nothing that's going to cause harm to myself or yourself or anything of the sort, but it's all right to lay back a little bit.
Let your hair down a little bit.
If you have hair. But anyway, on the other end, if you're in a situation where you are meant to be a firebrand and you're used to having to cause controversy or create situations of large discussion, and people are relying on you now that you're representing a large group of people, maybe it's generational, maybe it's political, cultural, financial, I don't know, whatever category. And you always have to be this person that drives up the energy. You can keep it mellow if you never get that opportunity. Recharge your batteries. Don't worry about how it's going to look. This is all confidential stuff in these sessions. So whichever end of the spectrum the person is dealing with, that's the way I would go. I would let them know that that's their right. And they may not believe me. Part of it may be the actual gender situation. If it's upfront like that, then we'll talk about it. If it's not as much of a problem, great. And if there is a situation, to tie it back once again to the Carol Danvers discussion, if there's a matter of sexual trauma and it's something that they're comfortable talking about, as with most forms of trauma with PTSD or whatnot, then I give them the opportunity. If they don't want to discuss details, that's fine. If they've never had the opportunity to say anything, and this is their opportunity, then go for it. My number one skill during this is to listen. I may give positive feedback. I may give suggestions on how they can feel better about themselves, or if that's totally fine and they're comfortable in their own skin, I may give suggestions as to what may help them in their day-to-day lives so that they get better results than what they're already doing. But my point is, I want to make sure it's their opportunity to empower their lives in a way that they're not able to do because they always have to be on, whatever on means for them in that moment. Give them the power to show all sides of themselves, not just the one that they've had to use to fight for so long.
Yeah, I know a thing or two about being on in my life. I feel that just by virtue of my personality, when I'm in a social situation, a lot of people will look to me to be the one to spark the discussion, to bring the party with them or other things. And I know that sounds a little egotistical to say that, but just by virtue of the social circle that I run in, I'm typically looked at as being that type of person. And there are times in which I don't want to be that person, or I'm not in the mood to be on. And then I get, are you okay? Something wrong? Are you sick? Whatever. And then I feel that I have to bring that energy and be on so that other people will not worry about me or question themselves. So it can be draining. And so I certainly do understand and appreciate where that comes from and how someone like that would be appreciative of having that kind of safe space where they can be the mellow type. They can be a little more pensive. They can take things slower, more quietly, etc. Because especially as I've gotten older, I've come to appreciate that the energy that you save by not being on allows you to direct it somewhere where it can be potentially more efficient or more effective in another area, and not spending all that energy on appearances. In my older age, speaking as a 36-year-old elder statesman, but as I've gotten older, I've come to appreciate just not worrying so much about appearances. And I think, frankly, that's why some senior citizens just do and say what they want, because they don't care what other people think. They're just going to get away with whatever because, oh, look, they're being a silly old person, or they're just, grandma's running off at the mouth again, or, Gampy's just going to say whatever it is that comes to his mind, whatever the scenario is. It's because you have decided that your energies are better spent elsewhere.
Excellent point.
So we're going to wrap all this up and see what happens when we get Carol Danvers on Dr. Issues' couch.
Hello, Miss Danvers. I'm Dr. Issues.
I'm sorry, doctor. I need a minute.
Sure. Take all the time you need. If it's okay, can I ask why?
I dated a psychiatrist for a while, and he was brutally murdered. Every time I talk with a psychiatrist, I can't help but remember Michael. It's been a while, but the memories come back, and I can't always stop them.
I'm so sorry for your loss.
It was really rough because he was killed specifically to get to me. If we weren't together, he'd probably still be alive.
That does sound like a heavy burden. How do you honor his memory?
By fighting the good fight. By being the best version of myself I can be. He wouldn't ask for anything more than that.
Excellent. It sounds like you've given the proper thought to this.
You're not the first one to ask.
I realize you must have had so many experiences in your life, including that one where there's a lot to unpack. I apologize if we've gone down a road you didn't intend to. If there's something else that you'd like to discuss, otherwise be my guest.
It's fine. I like remembering him, and it is what it is. What I wanted to talk to you about is being a leader.
All right, I think we're getting somewhere. What do you think your role is as leader of a team?
That's just it. I'm not always certain. For years, I was doing my own thing, or I was part of a group but not the head. So I didn't have people answering to me, and I didn't have to always set the tone for everyone else. I could be myself and not worry about the impact. Now I have other heroes under me, and there's a structure there. I feel like I'm chafing sometimes, like I can't always go out and just bust heads because it will interfere with a larger plan or something.
Wow. Okay, do you have a mentor?
I had one, Marvell. That's why I have the name that I have. He was great. I miss him.
Well, then I'm kind of repeating an earlier question, but it's directly related to what you just said. How are you honoring his memory?
The same way I honor Michael. Fight the good fight. Help people. And that's why I carry his name now. It's always been a way to honor him.
Are there things that you do differently than him when it comes to being a role model?
He was just so good at his core. He did the right thing because it was the right thing to do. I do the right thing because, screw you, I'll show you I can be good.
So, do you want to feel more like Marvell?
Well, I'm not really interested in dying.
Touché. What I meant was...
I know what you mean. A little gallows humor. Sorry. I guess what I really want, what I really like, is the approval. Someone saying, good job, you know?
It sounds like you never got that.
Well, Dad wasn't always the best when it came to approval, at least not for me. My brothers, sure. Me, not so much.
And why do you think that is?
Because he was a misogynist. He didn't think women could do anything outside of the home. And I wanted to prove to him, still do, that I can be so much more.
Well, by any objective measure, you certainly exceeded the mark.
But he doesn't know that. He never will.
Then I didn't realize that door was closed.
Yeah, he died a few years ago. Never got to show him what I could do. Never got to show him who I really am. Who I became.
So, who are you trying to show it to now?
Hmm?
Okay, it's okay. You don't have to have someone in mind because you're going to show it to Dad right now.
What?
I'm going to give you an empty space. If it makes it more personal, it can be a chair. That's your dad. Anything and everything that you wanted to say, you're saying to him right now. If you're not comfortable right now, do it at any point that you feel it's necessary. Anywhere, anytime.
Seriously? Just talk to the empty chair like it's my dad.
Go ahead.
Hey, Dad. How's it going? This is stupid.
Keep going.
So, how have you been? How's heaven? Are you even there? Wherever you are, I'm sure you're having a beer. Always good for one of those. Is Steve there with you? I miss him. So, guess what, Dad? I'm Captain Marvel. That's right. I'm a bona fide superhero. I've saved the world. I've saved you. Saved you more times than you could count. Except for that last time. Couldn't save you from cancer. Couldn't save Marvel either. Cancer. That's one fight I wasn't there for. I probably should have been. Even if just for Mom. You know, she's been so strong since you left. She has to be. Not that you gave her much choice. She's stronger than you could have ever seen, even when you were here. That's where I get it from, I guess. You know, it's because of you I joined the Air Force. You didn't think a woman should go to college or have a job or do anything important because you just had to be the big macho man and women couldn't do anything without a man. Well, I've done plenty. And I've done it without you. How do you like that? Is that good enough for you, Dad? Am I as good as Steve and Joe now? Steve's dead and Joe's an architect, but the hero in the family, the real hero, is your daughter. Didn't see that one coming, did you? I could fly. Not just with a plane, but I could fly my damn self. You know, I'm strong too. I'm stronger than you. Stronger than any man. I can shoot energy blasts from my hands. They'd knock you on your ass, that's for sure. You know, I'm not just any hero. I'm one of the biggest and the best. I lead the Avengers. You know, people have tried to take these powers from me. That's how much they want them. Some of them have taken them from me, but I've always gotten them back. Always. Because I never back down. Because I won't let anyone take this from me. Not you, not anyone. Not again. Damn, Doc, that felt really good. I didn't think that would work, but it did.
You're welcome?
Thanks. Next time I need an outlet like this, I'll give you a call.
Please give me as much advance notice as possible. We need to reinforce the room.
Sorry about the damage. Send the bill to Avengers Tower. Tony will pay for it.
I think we have a running tab.
How much are your insurance premiums at this point?
They don't fit on a regular check, to be honest with you. Too many zeros.
So you need like one of those like giant Ed McMahon type checks?
Yeah, except I don't increase the font to go with it.
Ooh.
Like I said, running tab.
Yeah. Tony should really chip in more if he's going to be sending the Avengers over here to talk to you.
Yeah, well, I'm still waiting for my next session with him. If you go back to that episode, you know how that went.
Yeah. Hopefully he's dried out since then.
Oh, yeah, I don't think that's much of a problem. At least nobody wants to mention it anymore.
True. So I think this was certainly much more in-depth and heavy than we initially anticipated. I don't think when we plotted out how or what we were going to talk about that we envisioned it would go quite like this.
No, I didn't think it would go this way either.
Not in a bad way, mind you, just that this episode definitely turned in a direction that we were not expecting. Although I think it made for some fascinating and excellent points. And I really sincerely hope that our listeners take something away from this and that you take just a moment of little self-reflection if you feel that anything we've said has registered with you. I know that this happens to me on the regular, that I will often take the time to say that I used to think this way or I had these feelings at one point in my life, and I've done my best to try and recognize moving forward some changes that I want to make, because at the end of the day, all we can try to do is be the best version of ourselves that we can be, but we can't really get there unless we're willing to examine who we truly are and how we got there. And that implies having a lot of very difficult discussions and a lot of self-reflection. And not everyone is willing or able to make those kinds of choices or have those thoughts all the time. And you don't have to have them all the time. You don't have to be on a constant journey of self-discovery, because that can be exhausting. But during moments and discussions like this, I think it's important to just take that second or that moment and just reflect on if there's anything that you've done or said over your life that has led to something like that, or potentially led to someone feeling less than wanted or less than whole, and how not to make those kinds of choices in the future. And certainly, by extension, that no one makes those choices that make you feel anything less than yourself. So if there's something in this episode that resonated with you or really stuck out with you, or if you think that there's something that we said that was really out there or incorrect or wrong, please, we love the feedback, good or bad, because, and be honest with us, because we're not going to improve the show, or we're not going to improve as human beings unless we are frank and honest with each other. So please send us an email, capesonthecouch@gmail.com. You can tweet at us at capesonthecouch. You can comment on our Instagram at capesonthecouch, or you can comment in response to the Patreon listing if you choose to subscribe, or once the episodes go public, you can comment on them. Patreon.com/capesonthecouch. And I really feel that there's not too much else to be said.
Nope. I know this is the part where Anthony usually asks me for something and I have some witty or profound comment, but I don't have it this time because I said everything that I felt was necessary during the episode itself. And I just want to reiterate that every conversation that we have in life is an opportunity for better or worse for both parties involved. I greatly hope that you take that into consideration the next time you talk to someone about something that you would consider controversial.
Very well said. So next week, we are going to cover Monica Rambeau and following up with our back-to-back Captain Marvels. And we're going to have a guest voice on for the skit, Janae. So we will cover a little bit more about that in next week's episode. And then following that will be the Monocle from Umbrella Academy and John Constantine. So for Doc Issues, I'm Anthony Sitko. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next week.
Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there. Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.
Hello and welcome to Capes on the Couch, where comics get counseling. I'm Anthony Sitko.
And I'm Dr. Issues.
This is issue number 42. To follow up on last week's Carol Danvers episode, this week we're going to do another Captain Marvel, and it's Monica Rambeau.
All right, looking forward to it.
Before we get started, and this is something that we forgot to mention, last week was actually the 1-year anniversary of us starting this podcast. Our very first episode on Eddie Brock was released. Technically, it was Tuesday night, because I didn't know how to schedule it in advance to drop on Wednesday morning, but I scheduled it for March 6, 2018. Last week was the 1-year anniversary of that show, so thank you so much to all of our family, friends, and supporters. It's been an amazing year. Doc and I are so incredibly grateful for all the support that we have received from the podcasting community, from the mental health community, from the comic books community. And we've made so many friends and had a lot of fun over the last year doing this. And I know that we are just really scratching the surface of, I think, what the show is capable of. And we're looking forward to what year 2 can bring us.
Yep, you have aged us rapidly, but that means that we have more wisdom.
I don't think that came across the way you meant it.
Oh, okay. Then thanks.
In all sincerity, though, thank you to all of our patrons, to all of the family and friends that listen to us, particularly as we recorded and re-recorded and re-recorded the first episode. I think we did about 3 times before we reached the point that we were comfortable in figuring out, and yet still listening back on it, there are so many things that we would do differently.
Yeah. The one thing about any pursuit, be it business or entertainment, that we have to keep in mind is you're not doing it right if you're not ashamed of your first iteration. You should be getting better every time.
Absolutely. I don't know that you want to be ashamed of it, but you just go, oh, you know, I could do this differently, or I could do that differently. You can certainly be proud of what you initially accomplished. And I think looking back on the Eddie Brock episode, we are both very proud of it. But if you listen to that episode, there's a lot good there, but I think we've really refined the show over the last year, and we've gotten a lot better, certainly with respect to the skits and some of the analysis. We don't go nearly as in depth on the character backgrounds, and I think that allows for a little more time in some of the analysis and discussion when it comes to the issues. So if you haven't listened to it yet, please go back and check out our very first episode, and then listen to this one and see. Certainly, at least from an audio quality standpoint, there's a major difference because we have a mixing board and 2 much better microphones now.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's so much that we should be thankful for with the effort that I know you've put into this and the effort that I pretend to put into this. I'm kidding. No, I take this very seriously. I know that there are a lot of people sometimes that are reaching out for help and don't know how to do it. If you have to latch on to a comic book character that you seem to either enjoy or you think that there's a lot of you in them and we happen to discuss them, this might be your opportunity to do something for yourself. Obviously, we are not trying to be treatment-minded for our listeners. We just want to give some helpful hints and education. But having said that, if this spurs you to be a better person, then I think we've done our job.
And if this spurs you to be a better person, then I will gladly pat myself on the back and take full credit for it.
All right.
Now, and it's just, looking back, I mean, just some of the highlights from the last year is just, like I said, all of the new equipment that we got. Thank you, Brian, for your support of the show. We certainly appreciate that. I think one of the highlights has to be the crossover episode that we did with Popcorn Psychology and covering the Incredible Hulk. They came on our show. We went on theirs. So Hannah, Brittany, and Ben, we're looking forward to doing it again. And just some of the interactions that we've had, particularly on Twitter with the other podcasts. I was the guest on the Into the Night Moon Knight podcast. We got a lot of things in store that we're planning for season 2 or year 2. I suppose we're technically in season 2 at this point.
Yeah.
So we're looking forward to things in year 2. And one of the things that we're looking forward to is our first ever full guest voice on one of our skits. I know we technically had the collabo session with Popcorn Psych, but this is completely different. This is going to be the first skit this episode in which I take no part in it whatsoever. And very much looking forward to that. So tying into that, I want to give our shout out podcast recommendation of the week to the Lolita Gentry Project, which is run by Janae, who's going to be doing our guest voice this episode. And you can check all of that out at lolitajentry.com. It's a podcast. It's like a mixed media experience going over a number of different things. Major thank you to Janae. You can follow her individually at P31 Mission on Twitter. And you can also, like I said, check out Lolita Gentry Project on Twitter and all the various social media forms. So we're very grateful to Janae, who's one of our biggest fans and supporters, and someone that, again, we would not have interacted with were it not for this podcast.
Yep. Absolutely grateful for it. And I'm glad that we were able to get a decent actor to do something like this, as opposed to me having to deal with Anthony.
Yeah, I wasn't touching this. Again, nope. Not even trying to sound like a black woman. Not even going to try it. So I know my lane and I am staying right in the middle of it. Not even going to go for it. So As we said, last week we did Carol Danvers, the Captain Marvel. Side note, the Captain Marvel movie was awesome. And the fanboys can suck it.
Ouch.
I'm just talking about all the little whiny crybabies that were like, it's about Brie Larson doesn't want me to see this movie. I'm going to be upset. Meh, meh, meh. Everything about men.
Oh, boy. Well, I'll just say that if you had concerns about that affecting the movie itself, it really doesn't. Do yourself a service, keep your mind open, and enjoy a good cinematic experience.
Yeah. Also, just again, the 90s, it was my era. It was like going back to my glory days, like mid 90s. That was.
You sound like our Ra's al Ghul episode where I point out nostalgia bias being an incredibly powerful experience.
Oh, dude, I have such nostalgia bias for the 90s. I mean, come on. It had seriously, some of the best music. I have made the argument repeatedly that the era of music between 1991 and 1997 was like some of the most musically diverse eras of music ever. Just from pop to hip hop. We saw the rise of country and alternative grunge. I was all about the flannel back in the early 90s with my Soundgarden and Pearl Jam, rest in peace, Kurt Cobain. And then the hip hop in that era was just absolutely amazing. You had so many different. Hip hop was not just this singular monolithic entity that it was. You had the Afrocentric stuff. You had East Coast. You had West Coast. You had, the party stuff. You had some really underground stuff like Wu-Tang, which was just starting out, the really raw, gritty stuff. I could go off on 90s hip hop for an extended period of time. That's one of my favorite genres.
Clearly you can. And I really feel like if Ra's al Ghul were here right now and were born maybe a decade or two ago, he would sound just like you coming out of a Lazarus pit. I swear.
Probably. But that's not germane to the episode at hand. So let's cover Monica Rambeau. So she was created by Roger Stern and John Romita Jr. in The Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 16 in October of 1982. She was a lieutenant in the New Orleans Police Department. She tried helping out an old friend of her grandfather's who wanted to prevent the creation of a dangerous weapon, but in the process of destroying it, she was exposed to extra-dimensional energy, which gave her the power to convert her body to any form of energy. One of the men who witnessed the explosion said, "The captain is a marvel," so the media that overheard this dubbed her Captain Marvel, and she kept the name to honor Marvel, the original Captain Marvel, who had recently died. And the first costume that she had was created from an old Mardi Gras costume. Then her grandfather's friend created a costume for her out of unstable molecules. It's always unstable molecules.
Yeah, I mean, how many people have to suffer these horrible accidents and get all of these powers? I always wondered about that, and I know they had disclaimers, but you would think the number would be greater for kids who try dangerous stuff just to see if they could get superpowers.
Well, one would hope that their parents talked them out of it, but I suppose there's a Darwin Award for everyone, or the potential for a Darwin Award for everyone. Then she joins the Avengers to learn how to gain control over her powers, and she ends up becoming the leader of the team in 1987. She then loses all of her powers after overexerting herself battling Marina, the wife of Namor the Submariner. So she retires briefly from superhero duties until she regains her strength and her powers. When Genis-Vell, the son of Mar-Vell, becomes a superhero in his own right, he decides to honor his father's legacy and calls himself Captain Marvel. So he and Monica get into a little bit of an argument. So then she changes her name to Photon. She says, you know what? It was your dad. I'm going to honor that. I have no direct connection to Captain Marvel. You can call yourself Captain Marvel. I'll call myself Photon. So she rejoins the Avengers and she gets involved in some mostly intergalactic adventures. And then Genis-Vell decides that he wants to forge his own path and get away from his father's identity. So he begins calling himself Photon. Which, come on, man, really? She gave you the name already once. She gave you your father's name, and now it just seems like you're going right after her. Like, you want to call yourself after your father's name, that's totally okay. And I don't think anybody's going to take fault with that. But now you decide you want to come up with your own identity, and you choose one that already exists.
Okay, I'm going to come up with an innocent version of this. I know that when I was in school as a little kid, sometimes we would get assignments for a creative project, and the teacher would give an example. And I always hated that because once the teacher gave the example, all I could think of was the example as the project that I should do. And that was really annoying. So he heard the name Captain Marvel. Okay, that's his dad. Get it. Photon was the only other name he could think of because that was the last person associated with the name Captain Marvel. So it's kind of hard to just say, I'm going to come up with my own name when that's all you could think about. It's that old saying, whatever you do, don't think of white elephants. Now you're thinking of white elephants.
No, I'm actually thinking of J. Edgar Hoover.
Wow.
Why was that a plot? Why was that not a major plot hole in the Ghostbusters movie? I don't understand.
Hey, you got me, man. You got me. And by the way, stop thinking of white elephants. I'm talking to the audience now. It's okay.
Fair enough.
Baby shark, do 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 do. Yeah, anybody that's a parent, I just destroyed your commute or your walk, whenever you're listening to. Now that's stuck in your head. I did that on purpose.
They were just going to London. Baby shark, do do. So then, once Janice Vell decides to call himself Photon, Monica once again has to change her name. This time she changes it to Pulsar. So then she leads the Next Wave team against Hate, which I love. Next Wave. It's Warren Allison, Stuart Immonen, 12 issues. Please go read it. Don't look for much in the way of plot. That's kind of the hook of the book. I didn't mean to rhyme it there, I swear. But that's the point, is that Next Wave is about things exploding and characters being turned up to 11. It is one of the most fun reads I've ever had. It's an amazing read. So she changes her name to Spectrum, and she led a mighty Avengers team after the Infinity event, and she tried to destroy the Ultimate Universe to prevent it from destroying Earth 616, but Ultimate Reed Richards was able to stop her.
Yeah, never get in the way of Ultimate Reed Richards. If you want to read that run, oh my goodness, he is a villain.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Just straight up dick. Even more so than Scott.
Oh, I thought we were over it.
We've gone like 5 or 6 episodes without mentioning the fact that Scott is a dick. So I feel like I had to bring it back. Especially, listen, last week's episode was so heavy and so deep. I feel like we need to lighten this up just a little bit.
I agree.
You know, we need some sweet after the savory.
Yeah.
So moving on to the issues. Now, again, we're theming these Carol and Monica back to back. Side note, I really hope that at some point Monica grows up in the MCU, or that we get to see like modern Monica, because we saw her in the 90s in the film. And I'm really hoping that we get to see some stuff for Monica in the current era. So Monica starts off as a legacy character, even though she has no connection to the original. So Monica Rambeau was the second Captain Marvel in the print history, but unlike Janice Vell or even Carol, they took the name as a way to honor Marvel. Monica ends up with the name because one of the guys that was on the rig as it was exploding, or as she was destroying the machine and absorbing the energy, said like, the captain is a Marvel, but in French, I believe it was, probably like the Creole speak of New Orleans. So the media heard this and goes, oh, Captain Marvel. And the Thing even kind of confronts her about it. And he's like, well, yeah, I guess Marv's not really using it now. And there's probably another Thing out there somewhere. So like, I guess sort of hanging a lampshade on the notion that legacy characters can change names. But it's interesting in a way that we don't often see legacy characters take on a name with no connection to the original character. But as we discussed last week with Carol, carrying on a legacy character name can have its own baggage. So, Doc, I don't know if you want to address that a little bit.
Sure. And I apologize ahead of time for the people that don't care about sports. You're about to get more sports analogies. So there may have been this basketball player, Michael Jordan, I believe was his name. And Anthony is just giving me the ultimate look right now. But I can't just make the assumption that everyone knows who Michael Jordan is. So arguably greatest NBA basketball player of all time. Why would I bring him up? Because he is well known, and how could I compare that to Monica Rambeau?
He was well known as a golfer and a baseball player, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Hung out with Bugs Bunny.
Space Jam.
Come on and slay, and welcome to the jam.
The reason I bring him up is because after he retired, and even while he was playing, actually, there were a couple of people that would come along in the college basketball scene, or they'd be rookies or young players in the NBA. And the second that they showed a certain style or they had certain abilities, people would start comparing them to Michael Jordan. And there's one particular player by the name of Harold Miner. If we're going to talk about the 90s, we might as well go all 90s, right? He had the nickname Baby Jordan. I am not making that up. So this is a person that was not related to Michael Jordan, that may or may not have ever met him before playing in the NBA. And Michael Jordan actually took it as a slight and tried to play harder against him during those games because of that nickname. And this player won slam dunk contests like Michael Jordan and whatnot. But he never lived up to that expectation. And partly there's speculation it was because of the pressure. So Monica is in a situation where I'm not sure I would envy that, because I mentioned with Carol that there's a blueprint that Marvell was able to do, but that was a blueprint for someone with his type of abilities, and Monica certainly is powerful, but she doesn't come from that exact same area. She knows and is aware of how great this person is, but the pressure, instead of being a motivating factor, is much more of a headwind. She has to fight against the idea that other people, now that this has been foisted upon her, are going to have the same level of expectations. She didn't have to have any of the same goals. She didn't have to have the same personality. She didn't have to have the same style. So it goes above and beyond what most people would expect. And then to just have that thrown because of a coincidence? That sounds unfair to me. That can create a sense of injustice. And when a person has that, they're going to have emotional responses. Often, it can be a sense of anger. It can be a sense of depression. I'll give her a lot of credit because she seemed to take it in stride. She didn't try to be exactly like any other Captain Marvel. She did her own thing, and if people felt it necessary to continue with that moniker, then so be it. So I'm not so sure it was as much an issue for her as it was for the people around her. Is there an echo in here? I thought I said something similar with Carol Danvers.
You know, for a split second, I thought you were actually addressing the possibility of an echo in the room, and I was going to say, I thought we took care of a lot of those things.
So maybe she does deserve the moniker of Captain Marvel, if that's the way they both handle it. And I wonder, on top of that, is that something related to a similarity in terms of gender? I'm raising that as a legitimate question. I don't have an answer one way or the other, but I wouldn't be surprised. I wonder if there's an added layer to this if you included cultural or racial concerns. I'm saying that as a possibility. I'm not saying that it has to be that way. But once again, when you add these things together, you may end up with a person that has a chip on their shoulder. And for someone that is expected to lead a group or take more responsibility for things, that can have some interesting results, to say the least. So I don't really envy Monica for getting that thrown upon her as soon as something random happened. But once it was there, I think she did pretty well.
Oh, I think she did amazingly, all things considered. So the next thing that we see her deal with, this is particularly in the late 80s, is after she loses and then recovers her powers, she has some phobias about using her powers, particularly as they relate to underwater, because the way that she overexerted herself was that she spread herself thin to turn into many lightning bolts so that she could strike this giant Leviathan. And as a result, it nearly killed her. So coming back from that, when she eventually did regain her strength and her powers, she had a lot of concerns about overexerting herself. And that's something that we've discussed on occasion, loss or regaining powers. I know we talked beforehand when we were setting this up. It's not PTSD. We'll call it a phobia. So, Doc, I don't know if you want to address that.
Right. The reason why I went with phobia aside from PTSD is because, well, first of all, I wanted to vary it for my own sanity. And second of all, phobias are very specific. and they may or may not stem from direct experience. With Monica, it was very clear that it was the water itself, and it had a decent reason. She knew that as energy, depending on how she was conveying it, it could interact with water and cause disastrous results. And we're not talking about someone that's being neurotic, where they're creating a situation in their own mind that's above and beyond the reality that they're experiencing. Science tells us don't have live wires hanging out in the water. There's pretty clear reasons for that. So when she gets into a situation where that's the only way she can get the result that she's looking for, she's taking knowledge that what I didn't want to happen in the first place is about to happen, and it's going to lead to a result that, although it may help save a lot of people, I'm going to have a direct negative consequence to myself. That's the definition of sacrifice. And you're lying to yourself if you say that I want to make sure I sacrifice every day. We say that as a cliche, but to actually say I'm going to potentially end my life knowingly ahead of time with a plan because it's going to benefit the world at large, that's something that's difficult to comprehend. So she was able to do that one particular time, and it almost killed her. And she had to expend a lot of effort. So the honest question that she has to answer is, am I really willing to do that again? That almost sounds like a Monopoly, like get out of jail free card. Like you get one. You're not going to get multiple of those. So there's a very real fear that if she gets put in that same spot, what's the final result going to be? And what's dangerous about this is she's right from a logical standpoint. And yet, because of the position that she's put in as a hero, if it came down to that, she may have to make the exact same decision. I don't know what the right answer to this is because I've never been in that particular situation. But I can say that someone who, let's say, is a firefighter and they were in a situation where previously they've gone into burning buildings. I'm not saying that they should have done something different because you knew you were going to have to do that as a firefighter. I am going to say, though, that the general nature of what a firefighter does doesn't have to include certain events. So let's say the person has a specific fear of dogs. You go into a burning building, and it just so happens the person has a Rottweiler. What on earth are you supposed to do? This is your job. You didn't sign up for this extra thing, and it paralyzes you to the point where you say, I can't do this. But they know for a fact that there are people that need saving. You now have to confront the one thing that you did not ever want to experience in your life. And it's unfortunate because it may have been from a previous time where you were bitten. So this is not as outlandish as it seems. The idea that you have to confront fears head on is something that many of us don't have to do. At least not like this. Not this visceral. We can get the emotional and ideological situations, public speaking maybe, but not on the same level. And not this immediate matters of life and death. So kudos once again to Monica for surviving, but it's no surprise, in my opinion, that she would be totally drained.
Literally and figuratively.
Uh-huh.
So the last thing I want to talk about, and this is not something that we do often with respect to the issues that we tend to focus in on a particular run, particularly one that is whose continuity in canon is disputed. But in Next Wave, one of Monica's biggest things is that she's constantly talking about when I led the Avengers, when I was in charge of the Avengers. Now, I know it was done for comedic effect because literally everything in Next Wave was done for comedic effect. But it's the notion that she was hanging on to that leadership when she was in charge of the Avengers. And she uses that to try and either get her team to listen to her or to inspire them or to just say, hey, you should listen to me because I know what the hell I'm talking about. And it doesn't really go over well. I would say it goes over about as well as a fart in church. So if you can talk about the fact that she's reliving the glory days or hanging on to that, again, I know it's for comedic effect, but it was a pervasive thing throughout the run. So if you want to get into that a little bit.
One of the best examples I can think of that makes this relatable to everyone else is if you have to create a resume for yourself, let's say you're looking for a job or just updating it for your file, how do you present that on paper? Do you simply leave it as factual? This is what my educational experience is. These are the jobs I've had. This is the period of time that all those things happen. Or do you, let's just say, add some flair? Woo! Thank you. I really set that one up, man. Okay, anyway, I'm saying
I was styling and profiling for this company. I was riding limousines and jet flying.
Woo! Ironically, that's not far off than what I was going to say. I was going to point out that you make your accomplishments sound as great as they possibly can, even if they were more on the mundane side, because we naturally want to present the best light to people that are going to be making major decisions about hiring us, or if we're trying out for something and we know we have to put our best foot forward. You don't want to have everything revealed about the struggles that you went through unless you want to make something sound dramatic and how you overcame it. You just want them to know that you are awesome, and that's why you should be picked.
Well, that's the Miz, not Flair.
I really hope we have enough people that get these wrestling references, because even people that know Flair may not know the Miz.
Well, if they watch USA, he's got the show.
That's true. That's true of all the people. And if you liked MTV, if we're going to, once again, going back, retro.
Yeah.
Oh,
going
man.
really retro 90s here.
Mike Mizanin, that's who the Miz was. And he basically predicted that's what his character was going to be.
Because I'm the Miz and I'm awesome. Sorry.
No, you don't have to apologize. I brought it up myself.
Oh, good, because I'm not really sorry.
And that gets back to the resume point. There's a certain expectation that people are always looking to put their best light forward, and it's always up to the person hiring the staff to determine what's just for the moment and what is genuine and can be sustained in a work environment. So this is unique because Monica is more like a CEO putting his resume out in public, and it's online. You can research everything that they've done, and people already knew that. So you just saying it again to people that are going to be your subordinates is not exactly uplifting. It's rubbing it in. Or at least potentially that's the way they could take it. Other people can take it as a threat. I'm on top of the mountain and I'm going to rain an avalanche down on you. I'm going to make your life a living hell. Whatever. It could also be something that turns people off and make them indifferent. Yeah, you did that for some other company, but what does that have to do with us? You know nothing about what we do. So under all of those circumstances, you have these potential responses, but because you just threw that out there as the hammer, they don't have to respect that one bit, and you have to figure out why. So now it's not their job to acquiesce to you. It's your job to find out what their individual motivations are. So good luck, Monica. I'm pretty sure you're going to have your work cut out for you if you just keep saying that you're the leader of the Avengers.
But I wonder if she could get them to buy into her abilities as a leader if she tells them that she would cross the ocean for them. She would go and bring them the moon.
Oh, my goodness.
She could be their hero, their strength, everything they need.
Wow.
Yeah.
I feel like we should have a bell that we ding every time we make these random references. Then again, it would just be, hi, I'm Anthony Sickle, ding, and I'm Dr. Ding, ding, ding. We just wouldn't stop.
Yeah. So moving into treatment in universe, I want to talk about what Monica can do to help become a better version of herself. Because much like Carol last week, there's not a whole lot of issues that Monica has, or at least certainly not anything terrible. It's about making her better than she already is.
I think it's fair to say that when someone has had the experiences that Monica has, she has every right to have her own fears or concerns about certain situations. So if we're talking about the fear that you're going to be placed in the same situation and make a hard choice that might even result in your death, there is such a thing as delegation. I don't mean sending out a lemming or a guinea pig, and why does it always have to be rodents, to their doom to just take the brunt of the force of whatever you're dealing with.
Like a red shirt, Ensign Ricky.
Right. It doesn't have to be that way. I'm saying that planning ahead and having a proper structure so that people are able to do things with positive results, and no one, this is a scary thought now, no one has to be put at the ultimate risk of death all the time. That might be a good thing. You don't have to go with your number one phobia, even though in comics, that's often the recommendation of you got to fear, you just fight through it. And I do believe in that to a certain extent. I think you should lean into things that make you nervous, anxious, and are uncomfortable, because that's how you grow. That's how you learn. I don't think if you're in a situation where things cause you to become completely paralyzed and helpless, that you should immediately do those things as your next step. There is a gradual process that can happen with this. So for Monica, I would say, if you're worried that the next time you turn into an electrical form of energy, that you're going to come in contact with water, then find out who on your team is comfortable with water. Find out ways that you can insulate yourself. And I know there's a psychological way to say that as well, but I do mean like really insulate yourself. Anybody got a suit? Whatever. Maybe you don't have to be electricity near the water. Energy comes in so many forms. Can you turn into sound and create a tsunami? Can you turn into heat and boil it away? Whatever it is. Do you have someone that can think outside the box for you in those moments so that you don't have to come up with those decisions on your own? The idea of delegation in a time of crisis is crucial, because she's so powerful, she may think she can do everything at once. She doesn't have to. That's part of what true leadership is. She certainly can identify the powers and abilities of the people around her, but I'm not sure she recognizes how the interplay of all of those people can create a whole greater than the sum of its parts. So that's what I would talk to her about. And hopefully enough of it would resonate that she doesn't get totally shocked in the moment.
And if it happens, don't take it personal. It's just one of them days.
Wrong Monica.
Right. Or is it? She could moonlight as a singer. We don't know.
I swear to you, we did not intend to just go on this particular timeline. I don't know what to say, people. This is just happening. I guess I'm helpless to stop it.
Sometimes it's organic. So out of universe then, this is going to be an interesting one, because you've got the legacy characters, you've got the police thing, you have, frankly, and this is something that we really didn't discuss, we have the notion of the fact that she's a black woman in a position of power that carries with it, in this day and age, its own set of issues that shouldn't exist, but we're realistic here. They do. Mm-hmm. And so all of this put together, even outside of the powers, she's got the phobia stuff. It makes for a very compelling and interesting character.
Yeah. Yeah.
How would you treat a real Monica Rambeau?
Depending on the circumstances, and that's why I gave that exaggerated firefighter with the fear of dogs thing. It can be any combination of things, but the point is you're in a circumstance where you are in control of a situation, have to make major decisions, and you're going to have parts of it that are not only uncomfortable, but actually scare you. How do you get past that? I mentioned briefly that this can be a gradual process. There's a term for it, systematic desensitization. You find the mildest form of what the phobia is, and you gradually expose the person to various levels of it, to the point where, in theory, they are comfortable with the fear stimulus itself. It may not get to that point. That's actually very textbook, very systematic. You don't have to think too hard as to how that would work. It's the effort and the willingness of the patient to want to do that in the first place. So that's just something you create the timeline and you go session by session. The other things, oh boy, you had to bring them up, didn't you?
Well, I just thought it was important to note. I didn't want to gloss over it or make it seem like we were ignoring it.
No, I understand. I'm being facetious with that. I'm in an interesting situation to deal with this in the sense that I have to make sure, as we discussed in the Black Manta episode, I'm not a monolith. So my experience of being a black person may not be the same as someone else's experience of being a black person. It doesn't carry its own automatic expectations and challenges, et cetera, although there is a potential where there can be similarities. But everyone is their own individual. I have to learn to respect that from the start. Someone dealing with something related to how they are being treated or mistreated or communicated to differently as a female is something else I'll have to take into consideration. And I will say, and I hope I'm not stepping out of bounds with this, that the combination of those two things can be incredibly unique. Once again, not trying to say specifically a black female, but I'm pointing out the combination of gender, culture, and race for any one person can create its own unique experience. And I have to be aware of it. And if I don't understand, I have to take the time to listen. I know this is the part where some people may gloss over a little and check out because, oh my God, Doc is saying the same thing again. Well, guess what? If I'm saying something consistently, it's because I believe in it and because it's been shown to be important. So take it for what you will.
Truisms are truisms for a reason. Cliches are cliches for a reason.
Right. Another way to say it, and this might come from Tony Robbins. I don't remember if it was him or someone else, but if one quote unquote expert says something, they might be a quack. They may not know what they're talking about. But when you get multiple people in multiple circumstances saying the same thing that are considered to be experts in their field, you might want to take it into consideration. So in a situation like this, I would need to know, how has your experience impacted your leadership style or your style of communicating with people that need to do a job? If it does at all. Some people say that they're able to isolate that and created their own mechanism on a daily basis of dealing with employees. Some people point out that that's what they naturally do, that their own mannerisms or their own colloquialisms were so interesting to the people that they were talking to that they use it as a motivating factor. If they learn to say something in a certain way, that their crew responds to it well. Some people say that they notice when they bring it up, they'll only bring it up in certain instances, and it changes the direction of the team. In other words, don't let me get my black loud voice out. I'm not saying that as an insult. I'm saying it because I've been in those situations before. And sometimes you can use it for comedic effect. Sometimes you're using it as a way to grab people's attention. All of it is fair game. And I'm not saying that one way is right over another. But if I'm not aware of it, and if I don't discuss the results of it, then it can actually do damage. Right now, what we're doing, we're in the entertainment and education business. So I need to be aware that I shouldn't use slang terms. I'm making this very real for everybody here, because there is a certain way that I can talk that I don't usually talk that may sound insulting to people. It may sound like I'm mocking other people, but that wouldn't have been the goal. It would have been to get laughs. If I were with a certain group of friends, I know what I can say and have them have difficulty breathing because they're laughing so hard.
Yeah.
And yet, I know I can't do that in an office setting. I know I can't do that even if I were to walk out of this studio right now.
It's code switching.
You got it. And I recognize that people have to do that at varying levels depending on what's going on in their life. So I need to find out how often they're doing it, what circumstances they're doing it, and challenge them if I happen to notice that it may not be the appropriate time. That is an incredibly fine line to walk. And
oh, no doubt.
The idea that I would be doing this with someone in such a position of power, if they have a lot of other responsibilities, I have to be careful about the timing of even bringing it up, because either they're not willing to hear it or I made the mistake and misinterpreted. So sometimes you got to figure out if you're speaking the same language. And as a therapist, as a psychiatrist, I like to think I get it right, I'll say 80% of the time. And that may sound like a low number. My point is, I'm willing to learn the interpretation of the other 20%, as long as the other person's willing to do the same.
Well, a lot of it is give and take, and especially in the nature of what it is that you do, it really has to be a relationship. And so you have to learn how to speak to the other person. One of the things that I've learned, and I like to do this, I've done this a number of times in the show, is I will equate it to something that I can understand. The way that I speak to my wife is different now than it was when we first started dating, because you're learning about how to address them, what their responses will be to certain things, basically who they are as an individual. And so I think with respect to a therapy session, that idea is ringing true. And you just look like you had a major epiphany.
What am I doing? We have a character from New Orleans that has a phobia of water. Frickin' Katrina, dude.
Oh,
Can you imagine someone that's supposed to be heroic in a circumstance where people around them in neighborhoods that kind of look similar to them, but didn't have everything they needed at a given time? So you have the hierarchy of what's going on with society. You have a tragedy that's happening, a natural disaster. And in addition to that, you have your own cultural background and baggage, but also your responsibility as, let's say, a police officer or firefighter or things like that. In addition to that, you have family members that may or may not be doing things that we consider to be acceptable in terms of gathering supplies or looting. You're telling me that someone like that is immediately going to make all of the quote unquote right decisions? I'm not so sure. And all of those things are potential to be discussed. How did I miss that? I am actually ashamed of myself.
Don't be ashamed of yourself. It happens. Things get by us.
Yeah.
You miss things. I miss things. It's the nature. We are human. And I think
mean, the freaking Creole, the French culture that was established in that area compared to anywhere else in the U.S. is so unique. And to just gloss over, I can't believe I did this. Man.
It's okay. It's all right. It's all right.
Okay.
Don't beat yourself up. It's okay. There's so much to unpack. We couldn't possibly cover everything, and we were bound to miss something. And that's the nature of this show, and that's the beauty of this show, is we can always revisit Monica. And if she gets an appearance in the MCU, we'll do a follow-up episode on her, or we'll tie it in and we'll do like a whole Captain Marvel compendium. We'll cover all of them. The point is, don't beat yourself up too much for forgetting about the Katrina thing. I hadn't thought of it either, so I'm just as much to blame as you are.
Alrighty.
Anyway, so this is all going to lead to the skit. And for the first time ever, I'm going to step aside and let someone else handle the back and forth with Doc. Once again, thank you to Janae for her masterful handling and stepping in for this. So we're going to see what happens when Monica Rambeau sits on Dr. Issues' couch.
Hello, Monica. I'm Dr. Issues. I'm just assuming Monica because I don't know which other name I should try to use.
Monica is fine.
So what seems to be troubling you?
Okay, so I've been leader of several teams, including the Avengers.
So I've heard. That's quite an accomplishment. You should be proud.
Thanks. The problem isn't that I've been the leader. It's that the teams don't always follow me.
Oh, well, can you give me an example?
Okay. When I was leading Next Wave, my team was a bunch of nobodies. Elsa listens to no one. Tabby listens to the voices inside her head. And then there's Machine Man was on the team. It's not like I was working with the best of the best, and yet they didn't respect my leadership, my history. I led the Avengers. They should have been lucky I was even willing to work with them, and all I got from them was flack.
I can see the schism already.
Wait, you weren't even there. You didn't know what it was like.
But you put yourself on a pedestal without any of your team members considering you a part of their group. You made yourself an outcast.
I didn't need them to like me. I just needed them to respect me and follow my lead. Okay. They did enough to cooperate with each other, but we could have been so much more effective had they just listened to me.
I agree that you don't have to be liked to be respected, but you do have to be known.
How could they not have known me? I was Photon. I was Captain Marvel. Again, I was the leader of the f***ing Avengers.
And that's wonderful. But having public celebrity has nothing to do with who you are with the people you don't know. They can't relate to you. They're tuning you out without giving you a chance. I'm sorry to say, it's just as much your concern as it is theirs. You might as well be trying to lead them from another dimension.
Funny you should mention that. That's actually where I derive my powers from.
I got it. You can do just about anything. Actually, I just realized, is that what you're asking your team to do all the things that you're capable of?
No, that's preposterous. I know what they can and can't do, and I focus everyone's role on the team around their strengths. That's what makes a good leader. That's what I did when I was leading the Avengers.
Well, this may come as a shock to you, but your appraisal of their strengths and weaknesses may not match their own appraisals. Have you checked with each team member on whether or not they see eye to eye with you on their abilities?
I'll be lucky if I can get 2 sentences out of most of them when I ask a question. Well, except for Aaron. He never shuts up about how he needs beer and hates the fleshy ones.
So you've established that you have a wide mix of personalities, that you somehow have to get on the same page, and you expect your previous laurels to be enough to get them to fall in line. That sounds unlikely.
I don't expect to enter the room and have my team bow to me. I don't have that big of an ego. But I do want them to respect that I've worked my way up to the position of power I've been given and earned them. I feel that's worthy of consideration.
It's a starting point. Do you know what your structure is? Hierarchy of responsibilities, appointments, delegation? All of that has to be laid out as well as your reasoning. How much of that have you done with these teams?
It depends on the team. Next Wave was fluid because of the nature of how we started. We were hired by Hate to fight the UWMDs, only to find out that Hate was funded by the Beyond Corporation, which used to be a terrorist cell. So we got out of there before the shit hit the fan, and then it all went sideways from there. The Avengers had more structure. There were bylaws, ID cards, the whole 9. So it really varies based on which team you're asking about. Plus, the fact is that we're saving the world. So it makes it hard to beat up bad guys when you're squabbling about parliamentary procedures. No one cares about Robert's rules when you're squaring off with a giant dragon in purple underpants looking to destroy a town.
Leading an organization doesn't have to be an all-or-nothing process. If you've had success with one style, take the single most applicable technique and bring it to the next iteration. That way, others will see quick success and be more likely to buy in. So, no, I don't think ID cards would be necessary, but starting to create a hierarchy about who attacks the head versus who attacks the tail when battling a dragon in a purple underpants That's pretty helpful.
Luckily, the dragon thing was just one time. Oh, I certainly hope it was just one time. I shudder to think about dealing with that thing again.
But that's just it. You may not be dealing with that dragon again, but there'll be other enemies, other groups of enemies. You don't have to wait for the next problem to arise to have a similar structure ahead of time. Okay, do you train as a group? Do you review mission successes or failures? What do you do?
Again, it depends on the group. Avengers reviewed everything, trained all the time. Next wave was seat of the pants.
Well, based on your previous experiences, what do you anticipate your next leadership role to be?
I honestly don't know. It kind of makes me wish I was back on the force. At least there I knew where I stood, even if I was being held back unfairly. But we all wore the same uniform and knew what to do.
Yeah, uncertainty can be quite a pain, especially when you're just as uncertain as everyone else. So how do you translate that to your teammates when they feel that way?
Now, I don't want to give them any more reasons to question my judgment and leadership than they already do.
I think you have it backwards. They think you don't acknowledge what they're going through, even though that may be the common bond amongst all of you. If you start with the insecurities and give them the example of how you push through, it would give the opportunity for them to respect you even more.
I never thought of it that way.
I'm not surprised. Your background really didn't allow you to. Like you said, you knew why everyone was acting the way they were from the police force, and you didn't need to get into the details of their goals. That framework was thrown away a long time ago, and it's impressive that you've come so far without it. But you need to confront it before you spread yourself too thin.
Again.
Yeah, I read that in your file.
That was no fun.
So even though your teammates may not have physically gone through the same experience, I'm pretty sure mentally and emotionally they can relate. I may be taking a guess here, but you probably didn't do a debriefing about that, right?
No, I didn't.
Then you have another opportunity. The next time you're dealing with a group, let them know what you overcame and the stress that it put you under. It not only makes you relatable, but it can give them tactics and motivation at the same time without having to reiterate that you led the Avengers.
But I think that's important to note.
I know that's important. It just doesn't have to be the first thing you say.
Point taken.
I think you have a decent framework on what your next step should be when dealing with other superheroes. How about you give me a call when you deem it necessary to get some further feedback?
I will definitely do that. By the way, if the phone starts to get hot when I call, just drop it. Sometimes they overheat, and I don't mean to do it.
So I'll drop it like it's hot?
Never heard that one before. Thanks, Doc.
So would you say she's an angel of yours?
Oh my God.
I had 2 Monica references. I needed to close it out.
Yeah.
Comes in 3s.
That's amazing. Congratulations. I don't have anything to top that.
I feel very proud of myself.
You should.
Once again, thank you so much, Janae, for voicing Monica Rambeau. You can follow her on P31 Mission on Twitter, and you can also please check out the Lolita Gentry Project, a multimedia experience at lolitajentry.com. So that's going to wrap it up for this episode. Want to give a thank you to all of our fans and patrons. And please, you can find us on our website at capesonthecouch.live. You can check us out on all of the social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at Capes on the Couch. You can subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/Capes on the Couch at the $1, $3, $5, and $10 levels. So major shout out and thank you to all of our patrons for continuing to support this show. We are that much closer to reaching our $50 a month goal. And once we do that, we will begin live streaming all of our recording episodes and taking some comments and such from the fans while we record. So that's going to wrap it up for this episode, our back-to-back Captain Marvels. Next week, we cover the monocle, Sir Reginald Hargreaves from the Umbrella Academy, which you can watch now on Netflix. There's a Dark Horse character, so very interesting, sort of a messed up Professor Xavier alien weird type character. So there's going to be a lot of stuff to unpack there. And then John Constantine from Hellblazer in DC Vertigo. And then we're going to take a short break because my son will hopefully be arriving after we record those last 2 episodes and hopefully not before then. Otherwise, we'll be taking the hiatus a little earlier than expected. It's really not up to myself or my wife at this point. It's really now we're operating on his schedule.
Yeah, I have the strange feeling that it's not going to all go according to plan because that's just the way kids are.
Oh, I'm fully aware of that. My wife is fully aware of that. She's easier to deal with rolling with the punches. I am trying to plan for every eventuality, which is making me lose what little of my hair I have left.
Really?
So,
I didn't notice.
Oh, just go blow it out your ass.
That's the second time you've said that in a relatively short period of time.
So on that note, Doc, anything else you want to add constructively?
I just want to say thank you to everyone that recognizes when we deal with heavy issues, we try and keep things a little lighter from time to time. But no matter what, we want people to have fun, learn, and just be the best person you can.
Truth. So for Doc Issues and Janae, I'm Anthony Sitko. Thank you so much for listening. We will see you next week.
Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there. Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.
Hello and welcome to Capes on the Couch, where comics get counseling. I'm Anthony Sitko.
I'm Dr. Issues.
This is issue number 76, Kamala Khan, as selected by our patron, Ruby. Love this pick. Love this character. So thank you very much, Ruby. It's always a good time talking Kamala Khan.
I mean, she definitely is outside the box in terms of what we think of when it comes to comic book heroes. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, and something very, very special about this episode, which we'll get into shortly. A couple quick housekeeping items. First off, want to give a shout out to Seth, who is our resident Facebook group meme machine. So thank you, Seth, for posting all sorts of fun stuff over in the Capes on the Couch Facebook group. So if you are on Facebook, please check out our fan group. It is growing. We are small but mighty. And Seth is doing his part to make it very, very entertaining. So lots of good stuff in there. Also want to mention that for the next couple of days, Podchaser, which is an awesome site where you can leave reviews, is doing something really, really special. If you go on podchaser.com and you leave a review for a podcast, Podchaser will donate 25 cents to Meals on Wheels COVID-19 Relief Fund. And if the podcast responds to that review, they will double that. So the other day, I went on and started just dropping reviews like crazy. I was like Oprah. I was like, you get a review, you get a review, you get a review. Everybody gets a review. And of course, everybody who leaves a review for us will naturally get a response to that review so that we can get money out to folks who really need help, especially in time like this. Doc and I are continuing to social distance. He's at his house, I'm at mine. I look forward to the day that we can record again in person, but until we all move past this COVID-19 situation, I think it's best for everybody. I mean, my son just celebrated his 1-year birthday last week, and we had a virtual party for him because his grandparents, his aunts and uncles, nobody can come over and hold him. So that's been a little sad and a little frustrating, but we tried to make the best of it. So we had a lot of fun, video chatting with the family members. But in any case, that's kind of what we're dealing with right now. I know a lot of podcasts are talking COVID-19. They're putting out episodes. I know our friends Freudian Sips just did an episode on it. Necessary BS just did one. Whole host of podcasts are talking about this primarily. We are not going to be one of those podcasts. We're just going to mention it in passing and then move on. Because I think if you want to get information on it, you can go to literally anywhere else. But you don't come to Capes on the Couch because you want up-to-date information on real events. You come to Capes on the Couch because you want to learn some stuff, but you want to be entertained.
Darn right. I have to live with holding my N95 mask and guarding it like gold at this point.
Yeah, I don't doubt it. So let's move on to Kamala Khan. So she was created by Sana Amanat, Stephen Wacker, G. Willow Wilson, Adrian Alfona, and Jamie McKelvey. It's quite a cadre of creators in Captain Marvel number 14, August 2013. Now, her first appearance is a one-panel cameo that it's officially her first appearance. But if you really want to get into the point where you know who Kamala Khan is and it actually she's fleshed out as a real person, as a character, that would be Ms. Marvel number 1, February of 2014. So Kamala Khan is the first Muslim superhero to headline a book for Marvel Comics. She is a first-generation Pakistani American. And she's a teenager, and she kind of chafes against the rules of her parents. They are very strict on her. And so she's not really fond of that. One of the other things that I dig about her as a character is she is a major superhero fangirl. And so she writes a lot of fan fiction about the Avengers, especially Carol Danvers, whom she idolizes. So one night she sneaks out of the house against her parents' wishes, and she goes to this party. And then on her way home, she ends up exposed to the Terrigen mists, this weird green cloud that comes over Jersey City, which is where she lives. So rock on Jersey. And so the Terrigen mists unlock her latent inhuman genes. And it turns out that she has the power to shapeshift. And so her best friend Bruno learns of her abilities after she gets shot, stopping Bruno's brother from robbing the store that Bruno works for. So he becomes her man in the chair, so to speak. He's a technical whiz. And so he's helping her with the costume and providing intel. And so he helps her defeat the inventor, who is her first real nemesis. And the inventor is, I can't believe this is, I don't know who came up with this idea, but God bless him for it. The inventor is a hybrid clone of Thomas Edison and a cockatiel.
I don't know what to add to that. As a matter of fact,
I'm not making that up.
I know. It's just that strange.
It's just like when you're thinking, yeah, exactly. When you're thinking, who do I want this person to fight? How about a half man, half cockatiel with the brain of Thomas Edison and the ethics of Ayn Rand? So that's basically who the inventor is. So a bunch of stuff happens. A lot of Kamala's stories involve her trying to simultaneously balance schoolwork and superherodom because, again, she is a teenager. Very reminiscent, I would say, of early Spider-Man in the whole teen superhero trying to hide their secret identity, get into and out of trouble easily without tipping people off as to their superhero identity. And so in the Secret Wars arc, she ends up teaming up with her idol, Carol Danvers, and they help protect Jersey City for a spell. Then Kamala gets her family and friends to a safe place where they are waiting for the world to end. And then once the incursions pass and the realities merge, she continues operating as Ms. Marvel. So during a later battle with Warbringer, she's joined by Nova, Spider-Man, several Avengers. And so Iron Man is impressed with her and he offers her a spot on the Avengers. And so she accepts and she's like freaking out because now she's an Avenger, which is like beyond anything that she thought was possible. So one of the storylines is she's dealing with Hydra, who is using the Ms. Marvel likeness to co-opt their redevelopment scheme, which involves brainwashing residents, including Bruno and some store owners. And it's about gentrification of the neighborhood, which, Doc, you and I live in New Jersey. You and I are aware of a lot of the changes that have been made to Jersey City over the years. You take out the Hydra stuff, but a lot of this is really hitting home. I mean, we're seeing it in Hoboken. We're seeing it in Jersey City. A lot of that area that's adjacent to Manhattan is really being taken over by a lot of up and coming yuppies, so to speak,
Yeah.
and young professionals and things of that nature. So again, Hydra and the brainwashing thing is comic books, but the changing face of Jersey City, that is legit. So she does manage to defeat Hydra, but it takes a hit to her reputation because the residents of Jersey City who see Kamala as really, or see Ms. Marvel, I should say, as someone who really defends the neighborhood, they saw her face being used for this redevelopment and this gentrification. And they were saying, oh, she's a sellout and this and that. So it really messed with her, which of course was Hydra's goal. So
then that's when she decides that she sings Don't Cry for Me, Argentina. Oh, wait, no, that's Carmen Miranda. I'm sorry. But a very similar story. Anyway.
I was going to say that's Madonna, but I won't get into that.
Oh, geez. Okay.
So during the Civil War II storyline, she initially sides with Carol Danvers because Carol uses the fact that Kamala is infatuated with Carol to bring her onto her side of utilizing the inhuman Ulysses and the precognitive abilities that they have to stop crime before it happens. And so she's convinced, well, if Carol's behind this must be the right side. But she comes to realize that Carol's sort of manipulating her, and she stands up to her idol, especially after Carol's precog arrests a friend of hers named Josh, who was supposedly going to blow up the school. And in the ensuing attempt to rescue Josh, Bruno is seriously injured and he blames Kamala. So she's like, you know what? I have to do what's right, even if that means standing up to you. And so they have a falling out, so to speak. And so she ends up quitting the Avengers because they're too focused on the planet and not enough on the little guys. And so she joins the Champions, and this is a team of other young heroes. And so they recruit other heroes. They recruit the Wasp, Robbie Reyes, Amadeus Cho. There's a whole host of other teen heroes, Miles Morales. And so they sort of operate. And she ends up reconciling with Carol as well as Bruno. And in the newest, the current ongoing series, The Magnificent Ms. Marvel, not to be confused with The Marvelous Miss Maisel, it is revealed that all of her friends and her parents know of her dual identity. So I sort of gloss over a lot of stuff. But again, Kamala is a fairly young she's a young character, and she's also a new character. She's only been around 6 years. So there's not a litany of stories to tell about her. But again, as I said earlier, I like the way that she's written. She's young. And so she's got that spunk and that young vitality to her. And the fact that she is as infatuated with superheroes as she is, I think makes for a very compelling and interesting story. So let's talk about her issues. So before we'll get into the fangirling aspect in a moment, but the first thing that I wanted to touch on is she's dealing with very strict parents. And this comes not only from a situation where she is a teenage girl. So I'm sure a lot of our listeners who were all teenagers at one point, you all remember chafing against your parents. They had their rules. They said, you can do this, you can't do that, you can't stay out past this time, I want you home by then, et cetera, et cetera. Plus, she's got the immigrant issue. She has the religious issue. These are all, in her mind, ways for her parents conspiring against her, forbidding her from having fun, forbidding her from having a life. And so there's this struggle that she deals with. Again, the wanting to love and respect her parents, but also wanting to forge her own identity. She's trying not to be entirely disrespectful of her heritage, but still trying to Americanize herself to some extent. And so there's a lot going on here. And that's, I would say it's a very common issue. And kudos to G. Willow Wilson for writing it as well and as compelling as she did. So I'll stop talking and I'll let Doc take over.
Okay, no problem. Just a little background with G. Willow Wilson. She converted to Islam in her life and therefore has a very unique take that you can see through Kamala. But she made it very clear in previous interviews that she did not want the religion itself to be the overarching identity for her. And as Anthony already pointed out, the number one thing is this could just as easily be an Irish Catholic family in America. This could just as easily be an Indian European, British family that has to make some adjustments. This is something that all sorts of generations and cultures have to do in multiple times in history. I mean, that's just the way it is. America, of course, is known as this stew or melting pot, so it adds its own flair to it. But the point with Kamala is she's also at a time where her age and her hormonal development clearly is going to influence her take on the world. And you add in superpowers, of course, that's going to be something added to it. But you don't need superpowers to understand that you are getting more thrown on you in life than you ever have before. Academically, that's something that teenagers deal with, not just because you are learning things that you haven't learned before, but now I think we've mentioned this in previous episodes, the idea, especially in her family, of doing everything perfectly, getting into college, making sure that you have the right focus in life. Those are the things that are being thrust upon her day after day. Meanwhile, she still is a child, and therefore she still wants to have fun. She still wants to have friends. She wants to be able to have that level of freedom and do what she wants. So you have things that often are in direct conflict. So humans in general, we don't want to be in conflict. We want things to work out for us. And the teenage brain is usually wired to say that if something is not for us, then it is against us. And if something is against us, then it has to be, well, I'll use the gentle term, it has to be overthrown. Because no lie, there are some families where it does get into physical fights. Thankfully, that doesn't always happen. Sometimes it can be a matter of just simply doing minor rebellious things, something as simple as staying up past your bedtime, which is fairly innocuous, but it can take other forms. It could take experimenting with substances. It can take trying to develop relationships, even when your family, for many reasons, may either frown on it or outright forbid it. And we'll get into that a little bit later. It can be just simply doing the exact opposite of what people are telling you because you don't see any other way out. And I don't even mean that to sound as dramatic as I said it. It's more along the lines that you're just trying to see if your way of thinking will actually work in the world. It's experimentation. That's something that in theory you can have a balance for. But then again, I'm also going to take a side that, especially now that I'm a parent, maybe I didn't understand in previous years. There's a protective factor in why parents act the way they do. They've had their own experiences, been there, done that, and therefore either they found that their way worked, or maybe they found that they're doing something similar to what the teenager did and it didn't work, and they just want to protect them. But either way, it's the type of dynamic where it's not meant to be equal. And the best way I could say it is and maybe I'll get some flack for saying this, but your parent is not your friend. And so from that standpoint, some children wish their parents were their friends, and sometimes parents wish that they were their children's friends. And when there's a disconnect as to what level they're on, then that just makes it 10 times worse. So you end up in this spiral pattern of trying to get along more while trying to step on eggshells or trying to avoid stepping on eggshells and not making things worse. But also sometimes looking in and saying, okay, this isn't working, we have to step in, while other times you're saying, okay, this is a time where maybe we need to pull back. So everyone is struggling with this all simultaneously. And no one else, no matter how much we try, no one else can really automatically say, nope, this is the right way. If someone could do that, I'm pretty sure they would have already solved all the problems in the world and we'd be in a utopia, but we're not. So Kamala, unfortunately, ends up in a situation where she is able to do more than most teenagers, and therefore she's actually able to take control of a lot of things in their lives that she otherwise wouldn't be able to. And actually, that's not that far off from some of the things that are happening right now, because I can tell you anecdotally, there are some situations where teenagers are the ones with the jobs right now. They're the ones that have the license and are driving for Uber or Lyft or doing deliveries, while their parents, who have sometimes more upscale jobs, if they can't work for home, are being furloughed. So those types of dynamics are not just in comic books. They really do happen. And when it does happen, there can be some resentment that starts to build up, because now parents that were really trying to make sure that their kids are on the right path, that's great. But now they're basically saying, okay, well, you're going to take care of everything, right? Because that's your job now. And the kid is probably like, this was supposed to be like my fun money. Now I have to, help the family. What on earth? And I think that's directly related to someone like Kamala with her powers. So life can imitate art in ways that we don't even expect in these circumstances. I don't envy anyone that is going through something like that. To be blunt, I don't envy anybody that went through teenage years with that type of huge split in terms of the dynamic. But the thing I will say in general, from what I've seen, is that it tends to come from a place of love. And as long as everybody remembers that, there will be ways to work it out. I'll leave it at that.
Excellent point. And I am reminded of something that Sheikh Abdullah said in one of the series. I forget which one, because there have been a couple, where he basically says that, to your point, that each generation thinks that it invented love and that it is the first to go through all of these situations that it is dealing with, and that they are not really interested in listening to the experience of their elders, and that if they would just do so, that things would be better. And the other point that he made is also that parents forget that they also went through a lot of these same situations. And so they need to be a little more understanding of their children when they are going through it. It's like, now that the parents are older, you forgot you used to do stupid stuff back when you were younger. So maybe back off your kids a little bit and cut them a little bit of slack. So I think that parents and children, both on both sides of the spectrum, can certainly learn from each other and be a little perhaps more understanding, moving forward in the future. So the next issue that I want to talk about, as we discussed it very heavily, and a major component of Kamala's character and her characterization, is the fact that she is a superhero fangirl. She is very much infatuated with the Avengers, superheroes in general, and especially Carol Danvers, and which is all well and good. It very much leads to a broken pedestal situation, particularly during Civil War II, where she is convinced that Carol is doing the right thing. And because she's Carol, she must be doing the right thing. And it turns out that Carol is sort of in the wrong in this situation. And Kamala struggles coping with that. And this ends up leading to problems. They do eventually reconcile, but hero worship for anyone can be a major issue, even superheroes. So, Doc, if you want to talk a little bit about that.
Sure, absolutely. It's interesting because, in a way, I think I've experienced this on both sides. I had someone, I'm not going to give too much detail, but basically a known public figure, a physician, and some of the things that they did that I found out later on, I didn't agree with. It's as simple as that. That doesn't mean that I throw away everything that I knew about them or why I looked up to them in the first place. And then, someone that I know has made it clear that they looked up to me and I didn't live up to my end of the bargain. I'm not saying anything negative about that person at all. It's just the way it is. So from that standpoint, just, not just from personal experience, but knowing that in any relationship, in any situation where one person is trying to make a connection with someone else and they actually get the opportunity to make it personal. In other words, we're not talking about just fangirling. We're talking about the fact that she got to know Carol. She actually got to interact with Carol. They did positive things together. So that goes from just being a part of being a fan, which is short for fanatic. Sometimes we forget that. It becomes a true dynamic that is going to evolve over time. But unfortunately, sometimes we as humans like to simply focus on what we consider to be the positives and don't look at, I'm not even going to say negatives, we're going to look at the quirks and just throw them away as if they don't exist. So from that standpoint, you're setting up a straw man. You're setting up the idea that this is the thing I have to live up to and I have to continue to focus on. And then if any one part, regardless of if it's directly related to what I consider to be positive, goes wrong, then that means all of it is wrong. It's the type of catastrophizing that can lead to a very negative social outlook. So in this case, I will say Carol did have a direct role where when I read it, it did sound like she basically was manipulative. And that is always going to be true with someone that feels like they have a position of power. If that's the case, then no, I'm not going to say that Kamala intentionally did anything wrong, but the emotional burden then that creates for her is really painful. On the other hand, if it's a matter of a disagreement, or I'll make it sound ridiculous because that's kind of the point here. If the person that is put on this pedestal is doing something totally unrelated and just doesn't, it just doesn't seem germane to what that person's goal is. So let's say this could take a couple of forms. If we're talking really in the negative, we're talking about a cult leader that basically tells their followers, well, you can leave at any time, but they have so much power that the person that's in the cult basically says, like, yeah, I could leave at any time, but if I do, everything is going to fall apart. That's actually based in reality, but that doesn't mean that they shouldn't take the chance and at least get outside help so that they can live a better life. If we're talking about someone, though, that simply had their own ideas, and the best example I can give to do another pop culture reference with The Incredibles, Syndrome. I mean, he loved Mr. Incredible and wanted to do all this stuff as a kid, but Mr. Incredible obviously wanted to make sure, like, kid, you're going to get yourself killed. And it leads to the entire first movie. So that's a situation where, in theory, that child did nothing that he saw wrong, and Mr. Incredible clearly did nothing wrong, but because of that emotional weight that the child put on their own fandom, it created such a negative view that they devoted their entire life to destroying the construct that nobody else really had a problem with up until that point. So I'm using both sides to show how far the extremes can be. With Kamala, thankfully, she's able to show a level of maturity even at her age that clearly things don't have to be that way forever. Things may be the way they are now. That doesn't mean that's the way they stay. So even if a pedestal is broken like that, that doesn't mean it can't be mended. But then again, maybe you just don't need the pedestal at all. So I always appreciate these types of stories because they touch on the type of dynamic that you have so many times in life, whether one side is aware of it or not. If you are a person that has ever had someone like you, or say that they knew that they liked you from the moment they met you, or things like that, if you're not aware of it, and at this point, I'm giving myself just as much of this pep talk as anybody else. If you're not aware of it, then you can actually do damage and not even know it. And that can really, really haunt you. If it's something, though, that you're aware of and you continue to foster a positive mindset and a positive view for people, then hopefully it'll lead to more good than harm. So I'll kind of leave it at that, because someone like Kamala clearly is going to continue to have that. I think, going back to the original point, because there's so much of a cultural component to it. Even if it's not meant to be at the forefront, it is there. And there are real life examples of Kamala being used as a character to demonstrate that in our society. So it would be foolish to say that, well, the Carol thing, that was a one-time thing and that's that. Like, well, maybe with Carol itself, but not with Kamala.
Interesting. And I do like your point that instead of trying to repair the pedestal, maybe you should just get rid of the pedestal to begin with. I think that's it's a very powerful point, and it's not something I had really considered beforehand, because I guess I was looking at it from the point of view that this is her hero and her idol. Because I do think it's important that you have people to look up to. And I know you're not necessarily discounting the idea of having a mentor, having someone to look up to, but if it comes to the point of almost fetishization of that person, that's where it could potentially become a problem. And I think maybe for Kamala, it sort of crossed that barrier just a titch, and it took something like the Civil War situation to get her to back off and see things a little differently. So excellent points, Doc, as always. So the last thing that I want to touch upon is something that's more related to Kamala being both a teenager and, dare I say, to some extent, a young woman. But it's this notion of the whole crush that she has on Bruno and the unrequited feelings that she has, and this sort of will they, won't they type scenario where she's struggling with how she feels. And then we didn't really get into this too much in the background, but Bruno does end up getting a girlfriend because they push each other away for a spell because they realize that it's not going to work with Kamala's double life. And that so she basically tells Bruno, you have to move on from me. And he does very reluctantly. And he ends up dating this girl named Michaela for a while. And that really hurts Kamala's feelings because she was like, I thought you were like, my person. And now to come to find out that, you have somebody else that really messes with her for a while. It does, like I said, end up getting resolved in the current run. But just from a teenage perspective, the whole notion of unrequited love and teenage crushes could be very powerful.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think I'm going to use this as a reminder to adults, if you're listening and you have teenage children, if you don't remember what it was like for yourself, or you didn't even have that experience, so be it. But the first thing I will say is that it's real. In other words, I think it's become the status quo to say that when a teenager is in love or is experiencing that for the first time or any time when they're still in that adolescent phase, that doesn't make the emotion any less legitimate. And if we don't keep an eye on that point, then it becomes a situation where everyone is just talking past one another. We can't just flippantly say, "Oh, well, it's a thing. It's for now, but don't worry, you'll find someone, or there's other people." And all. When you start saying that too often, it starts to illegitimize the idea that a person at any age can't have the most intense feelings for their particular time period. That's not fair. So now that I've got that out of the way, this is a situation where Kamala really has an ideal, and similar to the pedestal thing, but not in terms of wanting to look up to someone. It's just simply finding that true connection that you think is going to last the rest of your life. That's the part that becomes so alluring at such a young age, because the types of love and affection that we experience up until that point for most people is very different. Let's phrase this a different way and make it sound almost bizarre. Someone that you have no connection to, a complete stranger that you will only spend a fraction of your time with, or maybe up to a school day, depending on how your schedules are. You are now so connected with that you are willing to say that they are the most important person in your life, and you will spend the rest of your life with them. Sounds insane, and yet that's pretty much what most of us do. We make decisions at some point that someone that otherwise, if it weren't for the fact that we just simply say, I want you to do this, will end up with a connection with someone else that otherwise would not automatically have that connection with you. That's true of friendship as well, but you're saying this is the one. I'm not going to get into polygamy or anything. So how do we get past that huge emotional and mental hurdle to say that, yes, I am going to completely trust this stranger. You have to have an emotional connection in theory. Otherwise, it just doesn't work. Even if it's backwards. In other words, let's go ahead and go with this because I'll bring in the cultural point to it. Let's say that you're talking about arrangements. Even in that case, just about every culture that does that points out, well, the whole point is you get so familiar with the person that you do start to develop that type of connection and recognize it as a positive, because otherwise it's just really creepy. So she's young enough where she's allowing herself to have that experience, and provided that there is that physical connection, and with teenagers, that is a humongous thing, then everything else actually sounds really simple. Like, why wouldn't I go ahead and spend my time with the person that is producing this feeling for me? So then the next hurdle, and we've discussed this in previous episodes, is what happens after that initial endorphin rush fades? Or what if only one person got that endorphin rush? The other person wanted the endorphin rush, but it never happened. Now we have the awkward conversation. Wow, I don't know if I want to continue trying with this, but I don't know anything else, so I don't know if I want to do this again. So now our brain tricks us. It tricks us into saying, because I had this positive experience with this one person in terms of the emotion involved, either that's going to be the only one I ever have, in which case I have to stick with that person, or the pain when it goes away is so bad that there's nothing worth it. I apologize. I said that so clumsily. It's not worth it to go through all of that again. All of this points to what some people have referred to as the greatest love story of all time. We were talking about this just before recording, about Romeo and Juliet. And Anthony, believe me, you could say it, I'll say it too. That's just total bunk. The idea that is the world's greatest love story, I think it actually is the perfect example of how teenage love is. It can be absolutely wrong. But like I said, not to lose sight of that very first point, the emotion is real, but the consequences don't have to be terminal. And so teenagers may or may not know the difference, and that's where they may need, or not may, they definitely need other older, and I'll dare say it, wiser people to remind them of that. But I'm also going to go ahead and I'm going to acknowledge, how many teenagers do we know that stuck together for years and years and end up getting married and end up having children and end up living the rest of their lives together? I see it plenty of times. I hope I'm experiencing it, to be blunt. So from that standpoint, I'm not going to knock teenage love. I'm not going to knock the crushes, but I am going to acknowledge they may be temporary. And if they're temporary, don't let them be the end.
Well said. I'm not going to comment more about that because I know that we are trying not to divulge too much of our personal lives in here, but I know at the very least, you and I know of at least one couple that we went to high school with that's still married and still together, possibly more. But at least one of them comes off the top of my head. So in any case, all good stuff. So we're going to take a quick break, plug a couple of shows, and then we come back. We're going to get into treatment. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Jimmy from the podcast Talk Me Into, the show where my co-host Dan, Jeff, and I talk each other, and maybe even you, into liking what we like. Here's a little taste of our show.
I need another episode.
Whoa, my God. I was not expecting this.
It claps too.
It does. It do clap. It's a proper bop.
Jeff and Jimmy, did I talk you into liking spoilers?
No.
If you feel so inclined, you can listen to our show every Tuesday. Find us in every podcasting app and follow us on Twitter at TalkMeInto.
Hey podcast fans, I'm Rachel, host of We're All Mad Here, a new podcast about the history of mental health. Do you love history? Do you love creepy stories of abandoned hospitals? How about questionable medical procedures? We're covering it all. Not only will we sneak around in old asylums, we'll talk about the patients that stayed there and what their lives were like. We're covering disorders, cures, and living life with mental illness. So come join us on We're All Mad here at allmadpod.com, because the history of mental illness is insane.
Hi, I'm Saladin Ahmed, and this is Capes on the Couch.
And we're back. So treatment in universe. Now, this is one of those situations where, and I know we're going to touch on some of the stuff a little bit in the skit, but Kamala, for all of her issues and for all of her teenage vitality and inexperience, and dare I say, to some extent, immaturity, she is incredibly well-rounded and very grounded and a very rational individual. So I'd be very curious to see what treatment options you would offer for Kamala Khan.
Yeah, I gave this a little bit of thought. I'm not sure it will be much different than Out of Universe, but I think there has to be some focus in terms of knowing her boundaries, even with her powers. There's this idea that don't want to crush her hopes. She at times feels like she can do anything, and that's a wonderful feeling. But I think she ends up putting on these rose-colored glasses that say, well, if I can defeat this person, if I can, hang out with these heroes and all this, I can do anything. And then the second that something goes wrong, I'm not saying she doesn't fall apart, clearly not, but you could tell that it does emotionally take a toll on her a little more than would be expected from someone with more experience in those patterns. So I think the main focus, may even be getting the type of interactions, like it would be interpersonal therapy. In other words, tell me about how you're interacting with Bruno. Tell me about how you're interacting with Carol. How, and almost going back and forth, line by line. Almost as if it's a skit itself. Mainly because when someone is so wrapped up in the emotion of serious events, they may not recognize each individual step they're taking and the influence it's having. In other words, I think she's actually pretty good at the whole. I think she's good at getting the main focus of major goals in life, but this is one of those few times that I think it's better to get focused on the details, because doing that will allow for her to have a better emotional process. Because what's happening is things are building up. And at the end, it's like, oh my God, what happened? And how she feels, while she might be able to process it a little bit at a time in the moment, so that it doesn't end up in this big, these big events that she has to make these drastic changes. So it sounds more dramatic than it needs to be, and I would like to limit that somewhat. And I think the types of characters that she's dealing with would support that. So I don't think there would be that much conflict per se. If anything, I would say the biggest conflict would be with her parents. But even that, especially now with the most recent issues, I mean, it sounds like these are things that can be worked out. Kamala comes across as what I like to refer to as the worried well. And I don't mean that as an insult. What I mean is it's the type of thing where a person is clearly, if no one intervened, like if a mental health professional didn't intervene, would Kamala's life be okay? And there's a very good chance I would say yes. But that doesn't mean it can't be better. And that doesn't mean that we can't help. So if she seeks out the help, that's fine. She's not in a situation where I would think to myself, oh, she needs to be in a hospital. She needs to do this or that. So I wouldn't focus on that. It would be, as I've said so many times, what can we do to make you an even greater hero than what you are? And I don't have any major gimmicks with it. I don't have any super strange techniques for in-universe. So, maybe it's just a little bland for that sake. Maybe I'm more of the break in between the action, but that's okay. Sometimes that's really what a person needs.
Okay. All right. Yeah, like I said, I was very curious how you were going to address all of the issues. And speaking on everything that's been going on with her parents, It is better in the newer stuff, but it is still certainly not, I would say, completely resolved. They are still very much worried about her and obviously concerned for their daughter, who is going out and risking her life on a almost nightly basis. And I mean, that's just a parental thing that, certainly you and I as parents can certainly appreciate, even if our kids don't have superpowers, that you don't want them going out and risking their lives on a regular basis, because there does exist a legitimate possibility that they won't come home. And as a parent, that is a terrifying thought. So out of universe, then, what would the equivalent be? I suppose you've got child of immigrants, a young teenage girl dealing with the strictures of religion and parenting and boy troubles, not to be sexist or pedantic about it, but that's essentially what she's dealing with, is boy troubles, trying to fit in, all of the teenage stuff. And so I know you alluded to it earlier. You don't want to say to them, well, that's okay, you're going to get over it, because that's being incredibly dismissive. But how do you give them the benefit of the experience that they don't have and won't be able to gain for many, many years without forcing it on them?
Yeah, the biggest thing here for teenagers is figuring out what their language is. And no, I'm not referring to like immigrants and different languages. What I'm referring to is, what exactly is it that the person uses either as a coping or defense mechanism, and really tapping into that. So teenage years have the capacity of being some of the most creative times in a person's life. So it's often where people are still trying to find what it is that's going to work for them, even as an adult. It can be a matter of music. It can be other art. It can be writing. It can be athletics, whatever it is. You have to tap into that language. So for someone like Kamala, let's kind of translate it where, she's kind of a school, she's basically I like to call them the hybrid. In other words, it's clear that she's smart enough to hang with the nerds, but athletic enough that she can relate to the jocks. So on one hand, in this case, someone like Bruno, I'm really stretching it, I know, but I want to make sure that it's relevant to real life. So someone like Bruno clearly is not a superhero. So he's more on, much more in the regular kid, possible nerd category. But meanwhile, the people that Kamala looks up to outside of this are all athletes and stuff, but she has such a strict religious family. And as a female in in a Islamic household, depending on what sport she's doing, it could be highly frowned upon, to the point of saying, short of forbidding, because they still let her do it because she's young enough and they think it's just a phase. So that's all incredibly realistic. To be blunt, that's pretty much realistic in exactly where we live. So from that standpoint, all of those things, it's a matter of, as I already said, okay, well, what is it that you do? What I need to know is, what do you do when you're alone? Because I know what you do with your family, because you feel like you have to kind of rebel. So you play up all of the sports and stuff. And I know you want to make sure that you have this relationship with this guy that you really have this crush on. So you talk about what books you like and how smart you are. But what do you do when no one's watching? That's the important stuff. Not that the other things aren't important. It's just that that's the therapy part. That's the part that's going to unlock how your emotions process dealing with these things all at once. So if I find out that she really enjoys a certain type of music, okay, let's tap into that. What are your favorite songs? Why do you always listen to those ones that are about heartache? That's fascinating, because I thought you had a good relationship with this person. Oh, you really enjoy writing. And we know that she does her fan fiction. Oh, okay. What happens to the characters? It's amazing. It seems like you always end with one female getting beat up by another more dominant female over someone that you say that you sounds a lot like your former potential boyfriend. Keying in on things like that can be really powerful. And the person may not have ever recognized that that's what they were doing. Although someone like Kamala honestly may be fully aware that that's what they're doing, but they just don't want to talk about it. And that's their one way to do it. So we may be like their living, breathing diary at that point, which is something that you have to take incredibly seriously. So when it comes to these things, you do your best not to press the person about them, because the second you do that with any teenager, that's when they'll clam up. But also, I've seen it the other way. I've definitely seen teenagers that this is their one opportunity to talk, and so they just want to get everything out all at once, and you have to slow them down. Either way, you meet them where they are, you find their language, and you do your best, because no one's perfect at it, but you learn how to speak it and translate it so that they're going to have a more smooth, positive, emotional experience during turmoil.
So let's talk about why you have Lizzo on repeat. I saw your Spotify playlist. It's nothing but Lizzo. Let's talk about that. Interesting. Yeah, I do think it is obviously important to discuss, to talk with kids about meeting them where they are. And I think that's to some extent what it is that you're getting at with the out of universe treatment is meeting them where they are and saying, okay, what's going on right now? And then how much of this are you willing to divulge to me versus trying to, I don't want to say pry it out, but you get what I'm saying. Yeah. So interesting. Well, we are on the skit now, and we have an interesting situation. This is our first ever open casting call for the voice of a character. I posted on Twitter and on social media requesting young female Muslim podcasters or young female Muslim fans of the show to reach out to voice Kamala Khan. And so we got a couple of entries, and Nur Chaudhry, who is a fan of the show, won the prize, so to speak. And so she is going to be the voice of Kamala Khan. So you will be hearing her momentarily when we get Kamala Khan on Dr. Issues' couch.
Oh, Kamala, I'm Dr. Issues.
Be cool.
Sorry?
You're the Dr. Issues.
What?
I've read so much about you. You're super famous, and you're talking to me?
Not famous at all.
I mean, sure you are. You're the preeminent superhero psychiatrist. You've helped so many heroes. Iron Man, Wolverine, Captain America, and let's not forget Carol. You're a real asset to the Avengers, you know?
Thanks.
No problem. I'm an Avenger too, or I was.
I see. You seem sad about that.
I mean, growing up, the Avengers were everything to me. They were so cool, and I wanted to be one, and then I got these powers, and then I became Miss Marvel, and then I became an Avenger, and then...
Then you realized it wasn't all what you thought it was.
Ooh, you're good.
I am the preeminent superhero psychiatrist, after all. So let me ask you, what's your primary reason for being here?
I guess it's just a lot to handle. Superheroing and boys and my parents, and I mean, if they even knew I was in here alone with you, they'd totally freak out, and Abu would ground me for like an eternity in a day.
Parents don't know what you do?
Well, my mom does, and she's cool about it sometimes, but my dad, he would never understand. He's all, focus on studies, beta. Only studies, beta. Make sure you're home on time, beta. Don't think about boys at all, beta. Or else I swear, he doesn't know what it's like to have something that makes you super happy. He really doesn't.
You sure about that? Sounds to me like he wants to keep you safe. Speaking as a parent, that's our number one job. I mean, you make him happy in his own way, and he's trying to protect you even without the superhero stuff. And besides, this is Jersey. Crazy stuff happens all the time. It's totally reasonable for him to worry about you. If something happened to you, he'd never live with himself.
I know. It's just, becoming Miss Marvel was the best thing that's ever happened to me. Even with all the nonsense around me, these powers, they help me protect my friends and my family and my city, and I'm doing the right thing, so why does it feel so bad sometimes?
I've told other clients.
Like who?
I'm not allowed to tell you.
No. It's cool. I was an Avenger. Did I mention I was an Avenger? I mentioned that, right? Was it another Avenger? Was it Carol? Ooh, what did you guys talk? Did you talk about me? Did she mention me?
Oh, I can't violate patient-client confidentiality.
Oh, come on.
I can tell you what I told them, but I can't divulge anything else.
Fine.
My goal is to make you the best version of yourself that you can be. Sometimes that involves some hard choices. Sometimes that involves asking yourself difficult questions. What do you want with these powers? What do you want to do with them?
Help people.
That's a simple answer.
I mean, is there more than that? I don't know. The Quran says, help one another in acts of piety and righteousness, and do not assist each other in acts of sinfulness and transgression. And that's one lesson Sheikh Abdullah said that really stuck with me.
But I ask you, seriously, at what cost? What does the Quran say about helping other people at the cost of your own life?
I guess you're right. Maybe I should have paid more attention to Sheikh Abdullah.
I'm not asking you to quote chapter and verse. My point is that no matter what your belief system is, and no matter how good of a hero you are or you want to be, you have to be sure to take care of yourself first. You can't pour from an empty cup.
I mean, I'm not empty, though. I feel like I'm overflowing. I always have so much energy, and I have a lot to say, and you're the one who can help listen to all of it, and you can fix it.
Whoa, this is a team activity here. We fix it. Let me ask... Oh, you could get that.
Oh, no, I'm not gonna get that. It's my father.
Okay, no problem.
Big problem? He doesn't know that I'm here.
Well, you're gonna have to talk to him at some point.
Oh, can you take it then?
No, he's your father.
Oh, okay, fine. Feed me lines. Tell him I'm in the hospital or something.
Hey, Kamala, just let it ring for now. We can work this out.
Abba.
And now this is probably where it gets awkward.
No, wait, it's, I'll call you back. I'm sorry.
That doesn't sound like it went well.
Well, there was no yelling. That's actually a good one.
So what did he say?
I'm not really sure I can tell you without making this a 3-hour session. He wants to protect me. He wants to know everything is perfect, but I'm not perfect. And I can't say anything besides that. Anything besides yes is a failure. And now I want to protect him, but he doesn't know it, not in the way that he should.
It's a hypothesis. What if you told him all of that the way that you just told me?
What? No. No way. No, you're just gonna sit there.
I tend to do that when I'm waiting for someone to accept the truth.
You know, you can really be annoying sometimes.
That's the spirit. That's what other people tell me when they really start to hit on pain points. Look, it gets better, I promise.
Okay, that's not as reassuring as you think, but I mean, whatever. What's good enough for the Avengers is good enough for me.
I like to call it the messy middle. It's where you find a balance between the uncomfortable topics in your life and the positive feelings that happen on the other side.
Does that mean I get to roleplay and beat up somebody?
Based on previous sessions, no.
You're no fun. Whatever. So can I include you in my next fanfic?
Sure, as long as I don't die.
Okay, consider it done. As a matter of fact, I'll send you an advance copy before I post it to freakingcool.com.
Thanks, just what I always wanted.
Then everyone will know how good you are, and you'll get more clients.
Oh, goody.
Well, I think that went well. Sorry, it didn't end quite the way she wanted it, but at least your office is safe.
Yeah, and I just get more publicity, which is exactly what
I know. That's all you ever wanted. That's why you're in this.
Yeah,
for the fame and fortune, right?
Yep. Good old anonymous doc issues. Yeah, that's really what I wanted.
So that's going to just about wrap it up for this episode. So coming up in the next couple of weeks, we've got Secret Identities, Shredder from Ninja Turtles, and Dick Grayson. We are holding off on the Natasha Romanoff episode because, as Marvel announced the other day, that they are postponing the release of the Black Widow movie to November on account of the coronavirus situation. We see no need to rush putting up the Natasha episode. So we will tie that one in with the movie come November when it is timely. So, which is fine. It, just like I said, it gives us an opportunity to shuffle things around a little bit, but we're all sort of making do as best we can. As we mentioned at the top of the show, if you go to podchaser.com and you leave a review for our show or any podcast, Podchaser will donate 25 cents to Meals on Wheels COVID-19 Relief Fund. And if the podcast responds to your review, they will double that to 50 cents. So I already know that we've gotten 1 or 2 reviews in the last couple of days. And I went on a review spree myself, leaving reviews for many of our friends' shows, and several of them have already responded. So if you have a Podchaser account, please go to podchaser.com and check out not only our show, but a lot of our friends' show. I know we're on a couple of podcast lists. It's basically, they're trying to be like the IMDb of podcasts, and I think they're doing a great service for the podcasting community. So podchaser.com is where you want to be, and obviously the money goes to a very good cause. Our Patreon review of the Lock and Key trade paperback is now up. If you are a patron at the $3 and up level, you will have access to that trade paperback review. Last month, we did the Joker Endgame, and we released that one publicly as a little teaser. And now moving forward, all of our reviews will be for patrons only. Our lucky patrons who will not be paying for the month of April because we are waiving all of the fees. And that was inspired by our friends over at the Perfect Package podcast show. So Chad and Dave, thank you so much for inspiring that move. And I know that Into the Night, the Moon Knight podcast, has been so inspired by our move. So I want to make sure we give full credit to Chad and Dave. They were the ones who started this off, at least as far as I'm aware. I don't know if they got that idea from anybody else, but kudos on them. I know that we will be making, or at least I will be making an appearance on the show at some point in the not too distant future. Doc, you and I are also, as of the time that this episode is out, we will have just recorded a guest spot on the Guardians MH podcast, our fellow Mental Health Avengers. So that's awesome to know, and looking forward to, well, as of recording this episode, we haven't done it yet, but looking forward to talking Mega Man will be the character that we're talking about. So I'm going to go, as soon as we're done with this, I'm going to go play some Legacy Collection to refresh my brain on the Blue Bomber.
Yeah, that really makes sense. Yeah.
So that's going to about do it for the show. As always, you can find us on all of social medias at Capes on the Couch. We are basically everywhere on all of the podcatching platforms. And if you listen to us on a platform that allows you to like, rate, and review, like Podchaser or Stitcher or Apple Podcasts, please do so. And if you send us a screen cap of that rating and email it to us at capesonthecouch@gmail.com along with your physical address, we will send you a sticker. And I reached out to our TeePublic store asking about wholesale of stickers. I'm not really sure if they got the email. I don't know what's going on with their manufacturing on account of the coronavirus. I do know, however, that we are very close. Doc and I are finalizing the design for our next shirt, our next logo. So it is real. It is a thing. And we will be finalizing those details very, very shortly. So stay tuned. And as soon as that goes live on our TeePublic store, we will let you know. So Doc, anything you want to add before we head out?
No, just it's a beautiful thing when teenagers really learn how to navigate life without absolutely destroying everything in their path. And that is not as sarcastic as it sounds.
Excellent point. So thank you so much for Doc Issues. I'm Anthony Sitko. Thanks for listening. We will see you next week.
Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.